Good evening, everyone. It's September 14th, 2022. It's 6:31 p.m. and this is the first Finance and Facilities Committee meeting of the year. First, can everyone online hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, good. So let's start out by going around the room and doing introductions. We'll start with the people. This is a hybrid meeting since we're in kind of a post-COVID environment. Everybody's got used to having remote meetings, so we're trying it this way. We have a beautiful big screen monitor here in the Innovation Lab at Woodlands High School. And we're going to go around the room and everybody will be introduced. And let's start with the people in the room with me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Julia Long, board trustee, and I am a student at R.J. Bailey School, who's a sixth grader.
Hi, I'm Katie McGee. I'm the parent of an eighth grader.
I'm David Warner, parent of a child who has graduated from Woodlands High School and now graduated from college.
Steve Woodland, Vice President of the Woodland Middle High School PTA, two boys at the high school.
Chris Bellin, parent of two at the high school.
Dennis Pugliese, Director of Facilities.
Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
And a couple of people back here in the corner.
Amy Ashmore, District Treasurer.
Elizabeth Zona, Facility Secretary.
And Zach?
Bring up the.
No, introduce yourself.
I'm Zachary Baker from BOCES. I'm doing tech support.
Okay. Carol, we're going online now.
Carol Allen, community member, and please excuse me, I'll have to leave by 7:30.
We'll do our best. Jim?
Jim Wadig, BBS Architects, Project Architects Manager.
Fred?
Fred Seba, Director of Engineering for BBS Architects and Engineers.
Ashley?
Ashley Pineda, I'm just the guy that stands in the corner. No, all jokes aside, a board trustee and parent of two at R.J. Bailey.
And Vice President of the Board.
Thank you, I forgot about that too.
Yes, you're too modest. Walter? Mr. Simon?
Oh, I'm sorry. Walter Simon, a community member, been active at the school for many years in the mainly in the Science and Facilities Committee. I am also a member of the planning board, former chair, and was involved in writing the BIS law for the town.
Jessica?
Good evening, everyone. Jessica Muldoon. I am a parent of an ECP and a Highview student.
Awesome.
Good evening, everyone. Faisal Siddiqui, father of a first grader. Over.
Wonderful. Anyone I missed? Okay. Yeah, hell, the gang's all here. The next order of business, you can go ahead and bring up the agenda now. Is to elect a chair for the committee for the year. I'm the incumbent chair. I think that we have, yes, Chris?
I nominate David Warner to chair the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
I move nominations be closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so all in favor of David Warner being chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee for this year?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
It was a tough political campaign.
I want you to get into this.
All right, so we have, so since it's the beginning of the year, we usually, the next order of business is to just talk briefly about our existing charges. So there is a charges document in the list. If you can bring that up.
I move, since we're all familiar with the charges, that we move on to the next agenda item.
So I will just very briefly read the bullet items. You were right. We will move on very quickly because the 5-year plan is coming, and as of the 20th of September, we will have a report on what's supposed to be in the 5-year plan. And that may lead us to modify these charges for this year. But what happens normally is that we come up with charges and the board adopts them. So the bullet points are, okay, mission: to provide feedback to the Board of Education regarding budget development, finances, and facilities. Specifically, the Finance and Facilities Committee shall make recommendations to the Board of Education for the development of the annual school budget, regarding prioritization of the construction, remodeling, and repair of district facilities, which is what we spend most of our time on unless it's budget season, to require and review a comprehensive annual financial report for integration with the district strategic plan. We need a multi-year financial report. I think we're working on that, and to ensure fiscal accountability and transparency. So those are our current charges, and we run on those until they get modified. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. There was a request for meeting dates to largely be on Thursdays this coming year. So as you can see there, I've listed dates. This happens to be a Wednesday. I think all the rest of them are Thursdays. So that we're meeting basically monthly. Any comments or questions on the meeting dates? Great. Membership. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I had my hand up in relation to the 5-year plan. When we embark on a new 5-year plan, do we get a summary of what was done on the previous 5-year plan as to what was accomplished and what is still open? And then from there, we build the next 5-year plan? Is that the procedure?
I believe that all of that may have happened in an earlier phase of the plan. So what they did is they convened another large committee of people. I wasn't on that committee this time as I was the previous time. And they set, they looked at, I think, at the previous plan, and they set some high-level goals. And then they split the committee into a number of small subcommittees over the summer, came up with measurable objectives for each area that they deemed to be most important in the new plan. And so they're going to report in September on what those are. And so there's depth of detail on that. I'm trying to remember. Do you remember any I mean, my sense was that the goals at the high level aren't that different from the previous plan. But I don't remember a detailed going over of how well the previous 5-year plan worked. Anybody have any other comments or opinions on that?
We basically had the 5-year plan that was submitted to the state with all the previous projects that indicated every project that was identified in the BCS. That was a complete list of everything that we prioritized for years 1 through 5. Our revision to that will basically be the same report because nothing was directed to us in terms of moving things around or shifting things at this moment. So we will be eliminating from that report work that has been bid, so that those no longer show up on the list, since those are technically projects under construction or in completion. And the rest of the work that was on there is still going to remain where it was with the same descriptions. Nothing really more will be added, since we haven't had any input from the district to add any projects other than what had been identified in the BCS. If there's work that needs to be added to the 5-year plan, once it is republished, that'll be the time to add things, I guess. But at this point, we're not aware of any new work that has cropped up that needs to be incorporated into the 5-year plan.
So it's just a matter of cutting down what you've got. So it shouldn't be that terrible a task. For anybody who's interested, that is you've just skipped ahead to item 8 on the agenda. And basically what happens is we had at the beginning of the summer made a recommendation that we would come up with a consolidated 5-year facilities plan at the end of the summer. But of course, concurrently, there's that facility subcommittee that's working on on what they think the objectives should be for the next 5 years. And so those two things should come together and be one thing. So you kind of have covered for item 8 in advance. Carol.
Okay, sorry.
We had talked about doing repairs to the chemistry lab at Woodlands. Is that something that needs to be added to the plan?
Okay. Jim, do you remember if we had, or Jim or Fred, do you remember if we had that in there already? I remember us having a discussion about getting the gas lines back into play instead of running on tanks. And then I thought that after that, you would have to deal with the innovation, the science lab. Yes.
Before he answers, can you clarify, Dr. Allen, of what part you're talking about specifically?
When we visited the labs on our facilities walkthrough the last week of August, it was identified there was no gas in the lab and the sinks were in bad condition. Therefore, whenever the students needed to do labs, they would have to move to another room. And we had suggested that the board should consider getting those repairs done since we want to emphasize STEM in our curriculum.
So we need to check the BCS and make sure that there is an item for upgrading the labs. I know that a few years ago, I think when we did the Excel aid, we actually had enough money to upgrade the demonstration tables at the front end where the teacher stands in each of the labs. And so if you actually look at the tile, there's the old tile and then there's the new tile, and those front tables were upgraded, but the rest of the labs didn't because we ran out of money. But I think now we can probably do something about that. So check the BCS and make sure that it's in there. And if it's not, then we should add it in.
Will do.
Item 75 has it.
Okay.
Did you say year 5?
Item 75 in BCS.
In the building condition
Can you read
survey,
it out?
item
You got it?
75.
Can you read it out?
Item 75 says other interior walls, and the text states fully renovate 5 science labs. At the time, it said cost of $2,500,000. Rebuild combustible wall construction in 3064, 124K, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so we'll have to look and see if we want to do the whole thing or do a subset of it.
Chris,
But-
is there a page number on there?
3.5 million.
2.5 million, she said.
Page 20, well, page 23.
Okay.
Is there anything on there that indicates the time frame and the priority for doing this?
Well,
What priority level is it?
You have to go
Let me go
to
back there.
the priority list.
She's looking.
Yeah.
I thought in your notes about the facilities or somebody said those gaps, should they be part of the EPC?
Yes, so the energy performance contract, and we're going to go over that a little later in this meeting.
Oh, okay, so you have that.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
At the time, it was priority 4.
Well, I
Okay.
think we definitely need to raise that to priority 1.
Maybe 2. Okay.
We're talking
If
about
I can-
STEM. We're talking about STEM here. This is
Yes,
directly.
we are.
If I can jump in here,
Okay.
after the walkthrough, the board president, Ms. Mars, reached out to me to speak to my wife, Amberine. She's currently not here. She's at the LFJ PTA, but she does work at Regeneron. And Ms. Mars and Amberine did speak about Regeneron potentially helping with the labs, because that was a comment that was made during the walkthrough. So I do not have an update on that, but from my understanding, speaking to my wife about this when we first moved here, is that Regeneron does provide support with equipment that can be donated that they no longer use, other elements. I'm not sure how far the CEC got with their discussions with the Regeneron focal point last year, but there was some discussions with Jamal and someone from Regeneron. So I would recommend you guys follow up with CEC and see how those discussions went last year. And I can check with Amberine when she's back at home and see what was discussed. Over.
And that can bring the price tag down, and then we can actually do the whole thing.
And I don't know if you can see me or not.
I have my hand up.
Oh,
This is gonna change.
sorry, Mr. Simon. I was gonna give an update on what Faisal said,
Okay.
but you go right ahead and I'll chime in later.
Okay. what we're talking about in terms of getting aid from Regeneron and making that putting that on the construction list to upgrade the labs, I think that's important. But the fact that they can't even use the lab right now. So a very high priority would be to at least fix the sinks and fix whatever is necessary so the kids could use the lab. And to me, that should be the top of the list. They can't even use the labs. So that should be top of the list. And then the other things, yes, needs to be done, but that will take more time and, we have to pursue that. But the fact that the kids can't even use the labs today, and we talk about STEM, that's inconsistent. I mean, getting the labs in the condition where the kids could at least use it should be a very high priority.
Okay.
Are
Yes,
the
Tracy.
labs completely out of use right now?
Not that I know of, but I think that, yeah.
Mr. Smith, they have class there, but then when they need to do labs that require that equipment, like the gas line,
If you
Then
need a
they
glass
move to a
line, then they
different
go somewhere
classroom.
else. So
So they
am I
are
doing a
available.
titration? I'm okay, but if I have to use a
Right.
Bunsen burner, I'm not.
and so I don't know what that means logistically.
Yeah.
For them. It takes crowds.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to give an update since it was mentioned that I reached out to your lovely wife, which I did, and I actually ran into her today at Picture Day. So I did have a conversation with her about it. She was going to get information for me and she did send an email. I haven't had time to forward it on yet. With regard to who to contact at Regeneron. Possibly with a letter. I don't know how that would happen. Obviously, the superintendent would be involved in if there needs to be a letter stating our need, stating something about who we are, etc. I don't know if the science department wants to get into it. That would be, you guys, the administration handling that. But she did send me a reply email for that. She also, in our conversation, talked about the mentorship. I forget what the official term is, but I think it's called Regeneron Science Mentorship. And so I did forward that on as well to the chair of the science department, who actually already knew about it as well. So I think that kind of is brewing to work. But with regard to having Regeneron donate or help in any way, I can forward that email on to the administration.
Okay, good. All right, so I think we need to plow through to the, as quickly as possible to the point at which we're looking at the pictures of the walkthrough. So that will bring everybody's memory up to speed, and that will include that science lab piece. So let's quickly go through the earlier agenda items. Okay, so in terms of membership, the public, we're now a member, we're now a committee of the board. So you can have 4 board members in the room without there being a problem, as long as you noticed everything. Yes, we're right. But the restriction is that, of course, the only thing we can do as a committee of the board is to make recommendations to the full board. So we're not, taking actions as a full board in this meeting. We're still, the reporting structure is there. What we do is we make recommendations to the board. Okay, so that means 4 or more board members may show up at the meetings. That's not an issue. However, to be a voting member, the rest of the machinery for it being a committee of the district in which we try for inclusion is still in place. So anyone can attend, but if we end up having a recommendation and we need to vote on it, then you need to be a voting member, and that needs to get renewed every year. So in the agenda, I've got a list of everyone who so far responded that they wanted to renew their membership or add on to their membership. If you know someone who wants to join, or if you have not yet rejoined, take a look and see if you're on that list and contact me, David Warner at greenburghcsd.org. That's DWARNER at greenburghcsd.org to renew or add membership. And so right now I've got Carol Allen, Gabriela Barahona, Dave Bridgelaw, Megan Hack, Amy Huang, Sarah Lazari, Katie McGee, Hugh McCauley, Steve Morton, Jessica Muldoon, Faisal Siddiqui, and Walter Simon. That's who I've heard from so far. Okay, what's going to happen then is we'll have an agenda item will be added to a future board meeting, and the board will then approve the membership list, and then we'll have our voting members for the year. So any questions on that? Okay, moving on to the minutes of the.
Question, please. Who are the three? Are there three trustees who are official members of the committee?
Officially, the entire board is on the committee, so any board member can show up. So it's not just the designated 3 or 4 people.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we need to move on to the minutes of the June 16th meeting. So can you take a look? That's a separate document. And it's going to be 6/16. Finance and Facilities Committee. Okay. You're going to have to scroll back up. I think we passed it.
Go all the way back up to the
Back
top.
up. Wait. There.
This,
That's the tour, because it has all the nice photographs. Minutes, where it says minutes, they're on the right-hand side, right-hand column,
this,
down one, there. Right, so it says minutes. Okay, so the minutes, pretty much in attendance, we had Dennis Pugliese, Elizabeth Sindona, Lisa Raymond, David Warner, Walter Simon, Gabriela Barahona, Dr. Carol Allen, Chris Vallon, Jessica Muldoon, Fred Siba, Jim Wadick, Katie McGee, Zachary Baker, Ashley Pineda, Amy Ashley Moore, Michelle Worrell, and Steve Morton. Those were the attendees back in June. And basically, you can slowly scroll through this thing so that people can take a look at it. We adopted the minutes of the previous meeting. We heard a presentation from Lisa Raymond on all the various kinds of flavors of federal aid and that we've gotten via or due to COVID, and where that material is. I think the status may not have changed, so I've got it on the agenda tonight, and you can tell me if anything's been updated, Lisa. Then we reviewed the board policy requirements for the 5 years facility plan. That's where that recommendation came from. That text there in bold was our recommendation based on policy 5630, which tells us what's supposed to be in our specific plan. And we're going again to coordinate that with what comes out of the 5-year plan for the district as a whole and make sure that everything matches. So it'll be a little while before we get that. The information we need will be made public on the 20th of September, and then we can have BBS go to work on that. Then we talked about various large facilities projects, the Warburg campus water line, the fire hydrants need to be upgraded. We'll hear a little bit more about that tonight and see if anything has changed there. The discussion of phase 1. And at the time, we were concerned that the NYSED hadn't come back and approved phase 1. Well, they've done it since, and we've started to make a little more progress since then. That happened over the summer. Then we discussed the energy performance contract. We had hoped to have a presentation tonight with a representative of Con Ed Solutions. That person will be coming in October, but we have a preliminary version to look at tonight. We've got some ideas of what she wants to talk about. The Woodlands Middle High School security vestibule and mansion roof. We put those two projects together for purposes of bidding, and I believe there's been a little bit more progress since then, and we'll talk about that again tonight. The smaller projects were the ECP main building. We have food warmer. The food warmers come in. We have Jackson, there was a heating coil issue, and hallway asbestos cleanup, which has happened over the summer. And we'll see some pictures in the facilities walkthrough. Then Highview, we had talked about the 3rd grade wing windows, and we'll talk about that more tonight. Bailey, the big deal we were worried about was asbestos removal and gym floor repair and replacement. and that has since happened. We'll go over, again, I believe we saw most of these items in the facilities tour. Then at Woodlands, we talked about the parking lot needing to be redone. We've done that, and we've since painted lines on the new pavement. The bus garage, we talked about repaving and an electric. We talked about an electric vehicle recharging station, and I don't think we've made a lot of progress on that, but we've discussed it a little bit. And then phase 2, which is the next thing that happens after we get out from under the energy performance contract and know what needs to be done and what has already been done is already under that price tag, is the ongoing thing that we will be looking at as the year progresses. We didn't have access to the master calendar, but we planned out all the dates that we have now. The meeting adjourned at 9 o'clock or 9:01 p.m. Anybody see anything that needs to be updated or changed? Yes, Tracy.
I don't remember where it ended up, but when we were in the gym and we talked about the new gym and also the Hubble camera, that there's another one down at the football field, but I guess there's issues with Wi-Fi, so I don't know if that falls in technology, if that falls in facilities.
Okay.
That fall. I don't know if the issue with Wi-Fi has to do with facilities.
Well, technology is going to have to do, I know we have electricity down there, okay?
Okay.
Because the scoreboards now sometimes work and you don't have to have a generator, right? So the facilities guys tend to take care of the electricity and the technology guys tend to take care of the Wi-Fi. I don't know if that's, is it still divided like that, or are you starting to do Wi-Fi stuff yourself?
No, that's technology.
It's technology.
Okay.
All right.
different meeting. Thank you.
And
I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, agenda, no, minutes adopted. Good. Okay, which brings us on to the one with the pictures. Okay. Right, and so what happens is that towards the end of August of each year, the Board of Education and the Finance and Facilities Committee go for a tour prior to school opening to see if things are as they should be and we're ready for a good opening. And generally, the tour was pretty well organized. Thank you, Dennis. And the status of the schools looked pretty good. So I'm really pleased. We have a new facilities director and we can hit the ground running. So did you want to walk us through this report a little bit, or do you want me to do it?
You have the floor if you want. You're welcome. If you need me to embellish, I'm here for you.
Okay, so basically we started out at Woodlands and we began walking through. So could you scroll? We had a little bus, and so we went to all the different schools on all the way up. The first stop was Woodlands. Some people followed in their cars, some members of the public, and they brought their kids in some cases. Walked through, and we had some board members in attendance, and Dennis Pugliese led the tour. The assistant superintendent for business attended as well. And at each school, either a principal or one of their representatives showed up and took us through their particular facility. So in terms of Woodlands, could you scroll up to the next page? Okay. That's the front entrance, the externals, pretty much all of the buildings looked pretty good in terms of landscaping. And, the yards were mowed and the trees were trimmed back and all that kind of good stuff. Yes.
I did get a question after this specifically about the vestibule.
Okay.
And about the entrance way to the vestibule. Is there any way maybe another time you could show the plans again? I guess because we did them quite a while ago. Someone was asking about whether there'll be an entrance on both the side, let me say this properly, coming straight down the steps and the side as well. Or if it'll just be an entrance coming straight down the steps.
I think it's on the side as well. It's option 2. Do we?
I believe in this, but
we don't have to do it now, maybe later,
All right.
So that people can see
Yeah.
it somewhere on the website.
Sure, we can bring it back up. Okay.
But would it be possible even to just have the artist plan maybe put on the end of the week with the superintendents, or, so that people can see it.
In the Friday,
Oh, and the update for weekly.
I mean, I haven't even seen it, so it's just what I'm saying is if you want people to see it, to get an idea.
then I should put up a picture, okay?
As long as there's not safety concerns.
As long as it's not a safety concern and saying, no, we're giving away our secret security information here.
And
Then-
so, it's, it's the outside, you're not going internal.
And it will be visible to all when it is built and not easily
And
concealed.
if it's a athletic plan, you're gonna jeopardize security, it must not be a secure building.
And also, someone asked me, why are we waiting, till October to start it? Someone did ask me that as opposed to.
So basically, we ordered materials and with their supply chain problems with everything. So we're waiting on materials. So,
And we're also waiting on the attorneys.
Okay. Okay, so
So-
it might not start in October.
No, it-
Depending on,
We're close. We're
Alright.
close.
So the assumption is that we will get done by December. Okay, that's what we're shooting for, and we have a plan for how the students will get in and out of the building while we're doing the construction during the course of the school year. So there'll be times when you're not gonna be able to go in and out that entrance. You can go out through the doors further down at the other side. Sometimes you can go through the art wing, sometimes you can walk around.
Yeah.
And so that will allow us to get it done during the course of the school year.
wonderful, thank you.
Okay, then, that's the side entrance. Okay, so that's the new security vestibule. There were some things that got moved around this year. The music room is where the old art room was, where people would line up the teachers would line up for graduation. That is now a music room. The principal's suite, the principal has been sitting in the back of the library in a side office. And so the principal has now taken over what was the guidance suite. And then the guidance department has moved down past the wise room. You make a left-hand turn and then they're off of the corner near where the old athletic offices were. The air conditioning and fitness center, there had been a malfunction with the air conditioning earlier. That's been fixed. We walked in and it was nice and cool. So that's good for anyone who wants to use it. The large gym asbestos abatement was completed towards the beginning of the summer, and we have a brand new gym floor. And then we also have the Hubble. Did you want to talk about the Hubble for a minute, Tracy?
The Hubble is, I can't read, 2 Hubble cameras. Hubble is a athletic system where the athletes can log on to that system and the Hubble camera will follow. I guess it also stores information on the individual athletes. They can use highlights to help get them athletic scholarships.
Teach their statistics.
Yeah, their statistics, build their athletic portfolio, I guess.
I believe we have 3.
We have 3? Oh,
I
great.
believe so. I believe there's one in the gym that's
Yeah.
permanent, and the field is permanent, and I believe we have one that
Moves.
travels.
Okay.
So if you go to the soccer game, if you go to the track meet, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and what I was asking about with the field is whether or not, I guess there's Wi-Fi. Does it need to be, well, that's technology again. Okay. I don't know if it needs to be Wi-Fi or if we can plug in something down there.
But as of June, when I spoke to Mr. McCoy, there wasn't Wi-Fi.
Okay.
To try to.
Bring that up.
So we have to do something about that. Okay. A committee, so note for the technology committee, Ashley, okay. A committee member suggested we add a hand sanitizer station inside the cafeteria to supplement the one outside the cafeteria entrance. You have that on your notes?
I have that in
Things
my
to do?
notes, yes. Yeah.
Good, good.
I spoke with the head custodian here about that, and sure that's something we can definitely take care of.
Okay, science labs on the 3rd floor require upgrade. We just talked about that. Energy performance contract should restore natural gas supply for both labs and heating. And then, so all the Regeneron piece, if that brings down the price tag, that's a great, wonderful thing. And we will upgrade the priority on that. Decaying dead ash tree near the mansion that has served as a power pole has been topped. I think there's a picture of that in the back of the report. We'll get to it in a while. We adjourned the board meeting at 10:59 a.m. One of the board members had a prior commitment, so then we were no longer a quorum of the board. But the Finance and Facility Committee, right, continued the tour from there. So if you just scroll down there, you see the nice shiny new gym floor. You've got 2 pictures of it in the upper left-hand corner. If you go to the right, to the picture in the center, If you look way up on the wall, there on the right-hand side, there, next to the left of the backstop, the basketball backstop is where the Hubble unit is installed. We have the, well, we check the fire extinguisher tags on all the buildings as we walk through to make sure that the fire department has been through and serviced, made sure that all the extinguishers are serviced. So that was good. We have some pictures of shiny floors. You know, you have summer camp, and you make sure everything is cleaned and stripped and has the proper finish on it. And then we check to make sure the kitchens are good and clean. There's a picture of the cafeteria. There's kind of the tour group there in the center, so you get a flavor of the people who are marching through. Some sample classrooms. There's a science lab in the lower left-hand corner there. And those tables are obviously a little worn and probably in need of replacement. And the big thing is to get the gas lines in there. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, that's the principal's office now, as opposed to what it was when it was in the library. So that's a little nicer. You can scroll down to the next page. The ECP main building was our second stop. Here, Standback hosted this portion of the tour. There were problems in the summer with bees. I guess we called pest control more than once.
Sometimes several times a day, sometimes two times a day they were there.
So that was pretty rough, but I think we took care of it.
Yep, we finally remedied that situation.
Good,
After numerous attempts, so we would take care of one nest, they would pop up in another spot.
Okay.
Occasionally, we had to treat several areas, the same area several times. But
Were they
eventually
just
we
honey
won.
bees or were they wasps?
We had every different type of bee, wasp. It was the exterminator he said he never saw anything like it. We had a good variety.
How often do we have exterminating services come in?
Well, we have every month, just for the regular service, and we call as needed.
For like.
Typically, today somebody was here at one of the schools, at Bailey, they were here today. If somebody has a different problem, we might have ants here.
This building had a mouse problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have them service every couple of weeks,
Okay,
but mostly as needed, minimum monthly though at every building.
okay.
It turns out to be
Sometimes.
about weekly.
Depending
usually.
on the pest too, right?
Correct.
They have to change.
Oh, you want me to take over here for a little bit? Go for it. We're still at a ECP building. The small storage shed in the back of the building was leaking and it was repaired recently.
Mhm.
It was probably a 25-year-old building, and the roof, it just needs to be refurbished. We've done some pretty extensive work over at ECP, sidewalk repairs, some drainage since the downspouts were leaking and running across the sidewalk in the winter. We've had some drainage put under the sidewalk so that the water that runs off won't go across the sidewalks and freeze now.
Good.
We've had the steps that were dilapidated, to say, those have been repaired and upgraded.
And widened, right?
Widened, with the sidewalk towards the boiler room repaired. Right now, we're working on installing some perimeter around the playground.
Mhm.
A lot of the railroad ties have outlived their lifespan. We're replacing those with polymer plastic, refurbishing the play yards with wood chips as we speak. One of the playgrounds has been completed, and then we started the other one a few days ago. We're expecting that'll wrap up in about a week or so.
So you have a number of pictures of classrooms that we walked through. They were in the course of getting them ready. Obviously, that's been taken care of now as classes have begun. You scroll to the next page. So up in the upper left-hand corner is the shed you were talking
That
about.
is the shed that the shingles have been replaced, yes.
Right, there was a spot where we needed to clear the shelf for the ventilation. There are ventilation fans behind all those jugs and things next to the bathroom.
The slide on your right, in the middle is the sidewalk that was repaired around the back of the building, and the lower picture is the steps and the wall that were repaired.
Yeah, there's Lisa walking down the steps, and they used to be about maybe only 2/3 that wide. Then you've got the playground equipment. Scroll down a little bit. Yes.
Yes, has anyone gone back to confirm that the items in front of the ventilation fan have been removed?
I don't know if they put them back. I walked through the building and as fast as you move something here, the teacher goes back and
Is it worth the conversation?
So at one point they were gone.
at one time they were removed and unless somebody's standing there, they might find their way back.
Window, okay. Yeah, you'd have to eliminate the shelf space. That's the only way to stop it permanently, right? Okay, there was a new window installed at one spot. There's your, scroll down a little bit. You've got your ventilation downspout there. Is that the spot you were talking about? There, that's towards the front of the building?
That
Next to the
was
stack
one
of
of them.
crates?
Yeah, there was actually another one on the other side of the over towards the kitchen door. About
Okay.
12 feet away from that one, there's another one, but those do work now.
And then the last thing I was concerned about is you see that lower right-hand picture. It's difficult to see, but there's a newer hurricane fence, and then there's an older section of fence. And it's tall enough so that if you're a 3-foot tall child, you know, from ECP, you're not going to get over it, but it's not as you know, the little bits of wire are not quite like they should be. Are we considering replacing that?
Yes, I have a call into the fence company. The one section of fence is it has the big openings. It's not. That fence, it must have been there for 50 years. You can see it's grown into the front of the tree there. That was probably when there was horses running in that area.
Okay, so that's to be done.
That's on the
it's
on the plan to be repaired.
good. Let's move on to Bailey. Scroll down another page. Okay. So Principal Rossi hosted this portion of the tour. And of course, the big deal was that we've been working on the auditorium. Talk about that.
Correct. I guess from what I hear, they've been talking about taking the seats out of the auditorium for 20-25 years or so. But the problem is it was an asbestos abatement. So it would have to be completed over the summertime. It was a big project. It was 500-600 seats that had to be removed. That was completed over the summer. And now we have a clean slate to work with. I'm also looking at some of the floor. You might notice the floor is a little shinier this year. We changed the floor products. I wasn't happy with the guys were putting a lot of effort into the floors. I watched them how they were doing the floors, and I wasn't happy. They should have been looking better. So we changed the floor products, and it's made a significant difference. You know, teachers, parents.
If I can see the lights in the floor.
Correct.
Then
you want to see a nice reflection.
Then you got to get a reflection. Yes. Chris.
What's the estimated time of arrival for the new seating and finishing up the auditorium?
That would be more of the architectural. You know, we need the funding. We need to get an approval from SED. It has to be approved for everything from, you know, the way the aisles are set up, configured to AED seating. And also we want to make sure that roof above it is fixed before we, you know, install new seats. We want to make sure that we have a nice watertight area. Right now, there's some leaks above the area that are affecting the plaster, and we don't want to jeopardize that. We want to make sure that we have a nice, the roof is solid before we go installing the seats.
BBS, at this point, could you chime in on where we are at in terms of finalizing the plan for the auditorium for submission to NYSED?
At this point, we don't have anything. We weren't progressing anything because we're going to meet to form a group that was going to give us some direction as far as what needed to be done, if it was going to be more of an elaborate project. But at this point, if it's just going to be the basic money that's going to be coming from whatever grant that's available, we'll have to work towards that end. If it's just seating and flooring and carpeting or something, then you know, that's all it's going to be. It might not be any of the other electronics and audio and visual stuff that we were talking about last summer or at the end of the year. So if it's just going to be a basic, get this, once the roof is watertight, we're going to get in there and just do flooring and, redo some of the paint and repair some of the plaster and then do the seating. That's like a phase one, I guess, of the overall work that should be done in there. Because there is a lot of work that needs to be done on the stage, replacing the curtains. I don't know if that's going to be considered right now. The audio visual in there is antiquated. The house lights probably need some upgrading so they could, dimming capabilities. So there's a lot of, there's other discussions that we're going to be had as far as what gets done. But if we're going to start with just like getting seats and finishes taken care of, that's, something we can move on right away. But at this point, we haven't progressed anything in that regard.
I think Mike Messina of our office is going to be reaching out to Lisa, if he has not already, to try and schedule a meeting, come up and look at the space and meet with some of the stakeholders and talk about the space. We need to understand the finances that are available. I know there was a grant that the district had obtained, but there was some asbestos abatement work done. I don't know if that money came out of that grant or not. So I think once we have a better understanding of the monies that are available, we can evaluate what the district can afford to do with the remaining funds. So that's kind of where we are right now. So we're trying to set that meeting up in order to get that process started.
And we are working our way through the items that are much later in the agenda at this point. But Lisa, where are we with that $500,000 that Tom Abenanti had committed to?
I'm working with DASNY right now to do the final paperwork, and I did hear from someone from BBS gave me the budget, and it had to be from the architect. I just received that. I'll get that up to them, and then it'll be the next process, and hopefully we'll get the money soon.
Good. Ashley.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm glad that we covered that all real quickly. So just a recap for everyone, our goal, our urgency during our last few meetings right before the summer was to get the tear down of the auditorium done and remove the asbestos. At that goal, thankfully, that's all done. And the reason behind that, the reason this committee pushed so much for that was so that we would have the time to really think about how we're going to approach the new auditorium for RJ Bailey, to Jim Wadick's point, to plan this out, to map it out while everything else is happening in the background. The funding is all secured and all that. So obviously we still need to go through all those pieces, but thankfully we did achieve our goal, right? All the asbestos is gone. So now we can, once we decide on what we're doing, we can move forward with the project. But I would, my opinion is that we need to make sure that this is a well thought out project. I don't want to half piecemeal things together for this time. We got the urgent thing, which was the asbestos out of the way, and we have the blank slate. I would rather we take a little extra time, not years, but a little time, plan this out right, and then we can all move forward together with one concerted idea. And I think that'll work out better in the long run, but we did meet our goal. So thank you.
Very good. Could you scroll down just a little bit so we can see the two pictures?
My hand is up.
Yes, I see your hand is up.
Okay.
Carol Allen's hand's up. I just wanted to get this visual in place. So you can see on the left-hand side there, you have an upper picture where you can see both the balcony and the main floor. You have a cement floor where there used to be auditorium seats. So we've stripped all the asbestos out of there and all the broken seats. And the bottom picture are the steps of the balcony. So you can see what that looks like. There's a picture to the right there. That's the inside of the projection booth where we were worried about lead paint, but we've taken care of that as well. Carol, go ahead.
We said that we couldn't do the work in the auditorium until the building was watertight. What is the time frame on getting the roof repairs completed?
We need to get the money first.
We get the money, we get the approval from NYSED. It's one project. You just do the roof first within that project.
I don't quite understand. Are you saying we're going to be asking to do the roof work at the same time that we're asking to do the seating in the auditorium?
Yes, and then you complete the roof work before you put the seats in. We're not having two separate projects.
So you're saying that we're not going to ask for permission to do the roof until we finalize the plans for the seating?
I don't believe that there's a time constraint issue there.
I'm asking for clarification as to what. the
Okay,
process-
BBS, would you like to weigh in?
It could be done as a repair project in-house if you needed to get the roof repaired by a contractor. Or it could be more of an extensive, rip and replacement that would have to be submitted to the state and then incorporated in with the renovation work that's happening inside. So if it was just going to be a isolated leak repair, that's something that you guys would typically handle on your own with a local contractor to deal with the isolated issues. But if it's more extensive, like the roof itself is just not repairable due to the age of the shingles, then the entire roof needs to be removed and replaced, at which time it's no longer a repair. Like we found out with the mansion, it becomes a complete new project, which means it needs state approval.
Are you saying at this point, we don't already know whether it can be done as a repair or needs to be a replacement?
That is correct.
So we need to prioritize getting that done because we know how long it took to get the mansion roof taken care of, which is still not completed. And we're talking about an auditorium that needs to be put back in use for the students in the school. So we need to prioritize getting the answers to these questions so that we can move this project forward expeditiously.
It should
I
be
think-
the building condition survey, shouldn't it?
That's my question. Is it out of the building condition
Yeah, that's what I'm
survey?
looking for.
In the building condition survey, it calls for the roof to be replaced. It's exceeded its life expectancy, so, but if you were to look to expedite and do a repair in the meantime, before you got to the point where you needed to do the full replacement down the road, it's something that could be done, but at this point, we've identified the roof as needing to be removed and replaced.
And the funding for that comes from this grant? The
That's
funding
part of
for-
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just the repair,
$515,000, and it included the roof repair and it included the upgrade to everything that needed to be done, but it did not. When they figured the $515,000, they did not figure out whether they wanted to replace the curtains or
That's not included.
or do the audio or video. Right.
So
$500,000 will not encumber a roof replacement. That'll absorb all of that money. Replacement of that roof area will absorb all of that money.
But I'd like to bring up the fact that I get the whole idea, like Ashley said, about doing everything right and taking the time. But we have kids in the school who don't have an auditorium. If we can plan on getting that roof done and getting the seats in, the curtain is an afterthought. Right now, at least they can have a place to have an auditorium event. Right now, without the seat, they have nothing. And to go 2 or 3 years with people going back and forth trying to figure out what color a curtain is outrageous. So I think we need to expedite getting the roof done ASAP for the sake of the 3 sets of kids, the 500 kids that are in that building who need a seat. They need a seat. Get the floor done, get the ceiling done, and get the chairs in. You can put audio visual in any time you want to. That's a no-brainer. You can put a curtain in anytime. Get the seats in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simon.
I concur that to wait around until you get funding for a full replacement will take a lot of time. But we have to run the numbers. Whereas repairing the roof might be, a cost in the tens of thousands, 10, 20, whatever the cost might be to repair the roof. But at least once you do not have water in, I totally agree with Morton, then at least you could start doing the internal things to make the building, make the auditorium usable. The other thing I think we should always keep in mind when we are doing partial repairs is that we don't do things that will cause us to rip it out in a few years later. So for instance, if you are ripping out a wall, then why not put in conduits in the wall? So when it comes time to run the wires, you just snake the wires as opposed to ripping out the whole wall again and running the wires. So we should think about things like that, for a small incremental cost, you could prepare the job so you don't have to rip it out in the future. But I definitely think we need to repair the roof and get going and put in the necessary dollars to replace the roof.
Okay,
Chris has a question.
yes.
So you guys have said a lot of what I wanted to say. Ashley, I do appreciate that you're pointing out that we rushed on the asbestos part because we wanted to get that done while students weren't in the building. So, but I am a little frustrated, as always, that on April 27th, we said we'd do X, Y, Z, and we had a preliminary estimate of 515,000. The ventilation repairs to the roof that include the auditorium and Bailey are covered by phase one. We have that money that's ready to go, and phase one is starting now-ish.
Right.
And then the 515,000 was supposed to cover the roof leaks, the new plaster, the new paint, the seats, the floor, et cetera, so that we could make it functional, as a couple of you were saying, so that the students could have a full educational experience. So I'm a little frustrated that since April 27th, in a parallel line, we haven't been having the discussions about what's going to be in this project. So I thought we were supposed to be submitting that to NICEAD around now, so that we could move forward. I agree with Walter. I think if we're going to look at add-ons into the project, it should be that kind of infrastructure thing and not new curtains. That's something that could be done later. It's not part of a major project. I agree with that. So I just want to hear that where I want to get to. I want to get to at our October FinTech meeting that we've heard results of the meeting with all the stakeholders and that we have a plan and we're going to submit it to NICEAD by X date. That's what I would like to hear for October.
Agreed.
I also, if I could just say two other things. I'm sorry. I've said this multiple times last year. It's a little different this year. We're all working on this, but the people who are writing in the chat, because this is also broadcast, it would be helpful if you actually participate verbally because no one at home knows what you're saying. And also this is already awkward. Please, I just encourage you to raise your hand and speak up, even if you don't want to be on camera. And the last thing, going back to this and the Bailey pictures, I also want to just say, love the shiny floors. I want to reiterate to anyone watching, they're not slippery. They're shiny, but not slippery. That's all.
Okay, very good. Agreed. Yes.
So, Lisa, you said you got a budget that was submitted. Is that budget has kind of line items of repair and replace on it? Is that?
I had to submit what we were going to use that $500,000 for.
All right. So in a sense, we already have an estimate of what we're going to spend on roof and what we're going to spend on. So we've got that basic outline.
There's no estimate on the roof in that 500,000. That's only interior finishes, seating, flooring, painting. There's nothing that doesn't incur
the roof repair is in that 500,000.
repair.
It's
Not a
repair.
replacement.
Right.
So in that case, if the budget is already set and that budget came from our architects, so then you guys know what monies you have available, could you put together a plan for what the flooring should be and the seats and how many aisles there are and exit signs or whatever needs to be in there? If you already know what that budget is, work off that.
And we will, but we can't submit anything to the state until we have approval of that budget from whatever grant funding source there is. So we can start our drawings and field investigation to get that work started, which we will. But until we have, I guess, the official.
But we do have the official. We've had the official. I have the letter. That's why I'm continuing going. As they said.
The timeline that we had discussed originally was that the district was going to have the abatement done this summer. And then in the fall, when the staff was back, We were going to meet with the staff. We were going to talk about the space to make sure that we do it right. We were going to analyze the monies that were available and see what could be fit into the project. So that's the process that we're in right now. That's the meeting that we're trying to set up. Our anticipation is that we're hoping to send that up to State Education Department this fall. And hopefully, if supply chain issues are okay, try and get that work done next summer. So that's kind of the thought process right now and the path that we're currently on.
So we have a basic outline for what money should be spent where. That's okay. When will that meeting be set up? And do you know who the stakeholders are? Is that?
The stakeholders would be determined by the school district. So whoever you want us to meet with, I assume the principal of that building. I don't know if you want any theatrical people there. You guys decide who you want us to meet with and talk to, and we will have that meeting.
Okay. Moving on. Scroll on to the next page.
Oh, that is the gym at RJ Bailey. That was just replaced over the summer.
Keep going.
The walls, the mats for the walls, are they on order?
They have been ordered, yes. That
Okay.
was the director of athletics has ordered those.
Good. So that's something that there's been a soft spot in the floor in the corner for a long time. I'm glad we've taken care of that.
Repaired, yes.
Okay, so there are some minor, if you look at that last picture there of the parking lot, you will see some bushes on the horizon. That is
not a covering.
okay.
That is not a cover. I can see cars in there. I can almost see what kind of cars there are. That's not a good covering for those kids.
Okay, so you're saying, well, obviously it's growing in.
Growing in, that'll take 10 years to grow it.
Okay, so you would like to authorize some additional planting?
It was supposed to be a covering. Not, I mean, look, I can see the cars are looking at us.
Okay, so you will admit that it's a market improvement from last year?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I've been going past there every day and I see it. I live right next to it. I don't see any improvements. The bushes have grown 1/4 of an inch on some of them. It's not covering. It should be planted more in there. That's what we had said. That's not an improvement, no.
Mr. Simon, were you able to speak with the representatives of the car wash? And do they feel that they've complied with the project plan that was required of them when they expanded their gas station into a car wash?
Not directly, but I'm saying I don't think that's the way to go. The thing is that when the planning board approved that, it was a certain amount of screening. And if we feel that screener was inadequate, then you go directly back to the planning board, Garrett Kane, and say that the screening is inadequate, and you like for the planning board to take another look at that and move it from there. And then the either the commissioner or the planner or someone will speak to the owner and get things moving. And I think that's what's required, as opposed to making small complaints and you go on and on and on. Just go right directly to the planning board, send them a formal letter and say that the decision that the planning board made does not adequately provide suitable cover.
Who should that letter come from?
The administration.
Probably from Dr. Iverson.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and send it directly to Garrett Kane.
Is it the recommendation of this committee that Dr. Iverson should write a letter to the, yes, okay. Go ahead.
Yes, but
Go ahead.
I think at the time when all this came up, which was over a year ago, it wasn't necessarily the visual, although I appreciate where you're coming from. It was more the sound was the issue, to absorb sound and to absorb any noxious fumes. So I would like that to be mentioned in the letter, please.
Is there an issue with sound?
And the fumes I recall from, yes.
Well, how do you measure that? How do you assess?
Yeah,
whether
but
it's adequate or-
the thing,
There's a maximum number of decibels you're allowed to have measured at a certain distance from the property line. Go ahead.
But I agree with Mr. Simon. It's a matter of, I know, Mr. Simon, you'd said last spring that they had changed the plan to include more plantings. It's a matter of asking Mr. DeCane, have they complied with the plan that was approved? And then we move from there if it wasn't.
no, not comply with the plan that is approved, because when we approve it, we made certain assumptions that the plan that was submitted will provide adequate coverage. Now, after what, 2-3 years, you're finding that it is not providing adequate coverage, and therefore you'd like the planning board to take another look at it. You know, don't even go into the issue that is according to the plan, because that's what that will be the response of the owner. Well, I follow the plan.
Gotcha.
Right, so the letter is to the planning board.
Okay.
Do you want to go back to?
Yes. All right, so does anyone else have anything to say on this? So all in favor of this committee making a recommendation to the board that the superintendent should write a letter requesting additional coverage along the border between the car wash and RJ Bailey? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We're good. Okay. Okay. Leah Jackson. Go ahead.
Elias Jackson. Oh, yeah, the asbestos abatement was carried out over the summer. All the asbestos was removed.
Scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, a little lower. And you'll see there's a couple of the hallways there. So white tile with the blue borders. It looks absolutely beautiful. The project is totally completed now. And let's see what else we have. There's a lot of furniture was ordered over the summer. Each K room has its own color. Rooms were all the furniture was built and.
We're back in COVID land now.
Yep,
So
that's their own,
what
each
happened?
room has their own color, they speak.
Right, and they're back to individual desks, and the desks can be pushed together if you want to act as a table or in banks. But if you
They
come
are
back,
modular. You can put
Right,
them
it's
together.
modular.
If, you know, COVID flares
if
up.
COVID flares up, then you can
Yeah.
maintain the distance you need to. Good. What's going on down in the gym?
They were just
Cleaning
cleaning the carpets for the summer. Just that was right after the camp got out.
Mhm.
There was only a few week window before school
Good.
resumed again. The guys were cleaning the carpets and they were drying out in the gym area.
Good. Patricia Simone hosted this portion of the tour. On the upper left-hand corner, you can see, I think we've done a little bit better job with the landscaping than in previous years, so I was pleased about that. Scroll on to the next page. Right, so then, well, the bottle cap, the detergent cap mural of the tree, as beautiful as it is, it's been moved a little bit, but it's big and beautiful as ever for the ECP children to look at. The library is starting to come back out of mothballs and come into its own. The kitchen appeared clean. Fire extinguishers had been inspected. There's a little more blue tile there at the entrance where you can see that they made everything match. That's, you know, Leah Jackson is sort of the children's wonderland of our schools, and it's really beautiful to look at. And there's some new art project or some enhancement every year, and it just keeps getting better. So I'm really thrilled about it. Anybody else have any comments on Jackson? Okay, Highview.
We need space.
I do.
Yes, we do need space.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
actually-
I have one suggestion.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of good work that was done on our infrastructure, and just about from looking at the pictures, a lot of excellent work was done. Unfortunately, a lot of people who vote for the budget and vote for our bond are not aware of it. I would suggest that on our website, you have a page, you name it, or spending your infrastructure dollars, whatever. And you have before and after pictures, just with a little caption on it, just to describe what that's before and after. And you show these type of pictures that we've seen tonight, that's impressive. That's very impressive, but I think we need to make sure that the public is aware of it. And that's a very simple way of doing it.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
In Highview, we've had some new drainage put in the parking lot to eliminate some icing on the blacktop and the water. There was water pooling up.
You want to scroll down?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's on the second page. So Principal Gary Mastrangelo led this portion of the tour.
That's a side entrance.
They're right there, right in the middle.
Oh, yes, correct. The drain was installed. What happened is there was the back of the property, it's sheer granite. And what happened is the blacktop wasn't thick enough to create a drainage at the time. We had to cut everything, install a new drain and divert the water because it was pooling even summer.
This is on the north side of the building.
All right. When the timer goes up, we go read our books, okay?
Okay, and if you're looking at the picture on the left, that's the nurses access road. At the time, we had talked about that project has since been completed. It's emergency access.
The nurse's office is in the
ambulance up there.
southwest corner of the building. Behind the entrance.
Do you want to play?
There you go. Thank you. Then, all right, so that has since been completed, correct? So there's the equivalent of a ramp. I guess could you roll a wheelchair down that if you had to?
You could roll a wheelchair down there if you had to.
And it's primarily.
It's not designed for that, would be
Right.
It's only primarily drive an ambulance up there now and evacuate somebody.
Good. And it was primarily, the idea was to make sure that there's an entrance and exit from the nurse's office, such that if you find out you're positive for COVID, you can exit without walking through the rest of the building. So that's in place. Okay. Other items you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know if you see any pictures there, but around the playgrounds, a lot of trees have been cut back around the roof area. We actually had a living roof because of the trees in such close proximity to the roof. We actually had saplings on the roof, moss.
That's the eastern side of the Highview roof, the part that's slated for replacement as part of phase one.
Yep, a lot of the trees were cut back, leaning over the playground for safety of the old branches falling, directly above the playgrounds. Those were trimmed back quite a bit.
And there's a pile of brush that's sitting next to the Harvard entrance. You have the upper driveway in the back of the building. And there was a pile of brush we need to get rid of it. Is that on the list too?
That's on the list, yeah. There's some old equipment that's been in the woods for 50 years, probably, it looks like, and we're cleaning up the areas now.
Okay.
The trees look great.
Thank you.
Brush. And then scrolling to, here we go, the last page. We did notice that there was a plaque for a park. Hibbard Memorial Park in the back corner of Highview. It appears to be overgrown. We're not sure if it's our property. We check the borders on that to know.
I believe it's on our property, but I'll have to.
Yeah, check the GIS map. Town of Greenburgh has an entryway to the GIS map, and you can look and see where our property line is. And then scrolling down a little bit more, you have the farm, and we had determined that we've been paying the water bill for the farm. And it keeps getting bigger. I guess the town comes and mows that area, and you'll notice that there are areas that don't even have any garden plots in them yet. So you can see that all the new posts at one end. So I guess the bigger that gets, the more
they maintain it. But even since I've been here, I've seen it expand.
Okay, the more the water bill is. So we may want to talk to them about how we deal with that funding. We want to
find out how long the water agreement.
Sure. Yeah.
There is no agreement.
There is none.
There's no agreement.
There's no agreement.
Okay.
And what was it that you guys informed us about? Something with the water line affecting the garage or?
Oh, there was a leak over the summer. In one of the spigots that feed, and the town actually turned off the water one day. Unknowingly that it affected our transportation building. So
How can they turn off the water? Because the town is our water source.
Well, the town is the water source, but there's the valve for that also feeds the transportation garage. They were unaware. I got a call on Sunday morning that we had no water at the transportation garage, and I'm
Right.
thinking like the main broke or something, so I had to go down there and find out what was going on, only to realize it was a town who shut it off to make the repair at the farm.
Gotcha.
There is no agreement for community, I'm still at, there is no agreement for community garden.
I
Okay,
put
so
that in my Friday update.
that is,
Do we know is there a way to break out what that cost is from our water bill? Do we have any idea?
It's not, there's no separate meter, but it's, I would imagine it's significant usage. You know, there you have, quite a bit of farmland there that's watered several times a day. There's constantly people over there.
okay, so.
Can we ask for a meter to be installed on that separate line?
I believe that the former facilities director had asked for that, and the town was hesitant to do that for one reason or another.
They don't want to pay for it.
Correct, and it's, the cost.
Yes, once you split that cost out, it makes it easier.
Yes.
Right, so the request has already been made.
And I
Okay, so
know,
it's not, we don't need to make a new
I
recommendation.
was told that.
We need to enforce the old one. Okay,
So it sounds like we need to ask again.
yeah,
I'm just gonna say, I mean, I love the farm, but if we also ever want to put in a solar farm, if we're not getting any
Well, no,
sharing out of the town.
there was also a community garden on another portion of the property next to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and there was a possibility of renewing that and having it, and that would require a new intermunicipal agreement, I think, because while it was there for a number of years, I don't know if there's anything in force anymore. So, all right, so we have something to look at
So
there.
we need to mold this open.
Yes. Okay, so that pretty much concludes everything that I was able to list from the tour. Does anybody see anything that major that got left out, or anything that needs to be done to modify this, since this is, this was a Finance and Facilities Committee meeting? Should we adopt this as the report for the year?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we have now 7:49, and we have gotten through item 6, and actually we've covered a lot of the rest of this agenda in the process.
Yeah.
With pictures helping us, so that's good. Yes.
David, I'm not sure if this, because it's not something that was discussed on the tour, but it involves one of the items on the tour, which is the gym in the middle high school.
Yes.
The volleyball, the Woodland Falcons volleyball team's doing exceedingly well this year, and the volleyball nets and the lines that are put up are supposed to have holes into the ground. I don't know if Mr. Pugliese is aware of what I'm talking about, but there is 2 holes, I guess 2 more holes that were supposed to be put into that floor. And I'm wondering if that is on the queue.
Yes, right now, the stanchions are there for the main court. I was told that they wanted an additional 2 more courts to be put on the side. We brought that up with the flooring contractor, and the athletic director is aware of that, and we're discussing that with the flooring contractor.
So that's a yes.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm
David,
sorry, I couldn't unmute. Do we have any projected time for when that's going to happen? Because they came, they did the floor, they put the holes. Parents were told that there would be holes in that floor before they even did the floor. I don't know how these people left without doing those holes, unless it was just promised to parents and not done. So I'm wondering when that's going to actually happen.
So by when?
Yeah, I'll look into that with Mike. I did speak with the flooring contractor, and they could cut the holes in there. I don't know if something was lost in the translation or not, but I'll look into that with Mr. McCoy.
Okay, so by beginning of next week?
I'll find out where we're at with that, and what our plan is for the installation.
Okay, yes.
David, before we move, there's a number of things that we said, but we did not define whether or not we could take any action on it. And I think we should at least say we are or will not take any action on it, rather than just say it and leave it hanging. So for instance, we talked about the water bill and the fact that we are paying for the farm. So what's the action that we are going to recommend is going to be done? I talked about a page on our website to show what we've been doing. Are we recommending any action on that? I recommended that the chemistry lab should be a high priority, and we should do something to at least get the students back in the room. Are we making any recommendation on that?
So the chemistry lab is a yes. The website, we've just kind of done things by acclamation. We haven't done anything formal on that. And then the water meter, the question was, if the previous administration has already attempted to request the water meter, that means it's not a new recommendation, that's an enforcement.
I think it was the fund. I think the funding was the issue. Like, we might be saving on a water bill, but we might incur costs that would take us 20 years to pay back what the cost of installing the meter would be. That's from my understanding.
Okay.
Okay.
But do we have any data on that to indicate, approximate cost? I'm not talking about getting down bids and everything, and say, if we do the water meter, will cost X amount of dollars, we are probably losing, a gross analysis so we could even think in some objective way, determine if it is something we should pursue.
Maybe we could get a rough estimate from the architects of how much the excavation and the installation of the new pipework and meter would cost.
Why would we just let them pay for it?
But I was gonna wonder, is there a fee assessed to the people who are using the
Yes,
pond
$20.
for the year?
Yes,
$20?
$20.
They
They pay the town $20 to rent that little plot where they
pay
plant.
the town?
They don't pay us, they pay the town.
They pay the town, and the town water.
And there's no agreement,
Can I just read your?
and there's no meter.
Shut up. Chris has a.
Sorry, Ms. Raymond has given permission. She did provide a small report to the board, and she says it's okay to share here since we're talking about this.
Okay.
She said that they found a memo written to the board in 2010 regarding the farm, as the town calls it, across from the ECP building. Many years ago, the district created a garden platform of which its use had dwindled over time. Approximately 35 years ago, the district supported Commissioner Byrne in resurrecting the garden. As a result, the town of Greenburgh put in the water lines and drains them out. In addition, the town cuts the grass around the edges of the garden and in the open field every 2 weeks. Residents are charged $20 per year to use it, and this administrative cost is used to offset the town's maintenance of the area. Commissioner Byrne has advised that there is no formal agreement in place concerning the above arrangement. It has always been based on the reciprocal agreement the district and the town have in place.
Okay, that's fine.
So now, what you're telling me is that we need to know whether we need to push for a separate water meter, and we need to figure out within a certain reasonable time horizon, whether it costs more to put the meter in than we'll save on the water bill, if we can then go ahead and make an enforcement and try and get the town to kick in for some of the water costs.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I have a question. Has the water bill been a big increase? Like, what got us started on it?
So in August, when we did the walkthrough, Carol Allen, who I think may have left the meeting already, suggested that maybe we take a look at the water bills for the summer versus the water bills for the school year, just to see, I mean, it's not
Right.
exact science,
Right.
but it would give us an
For the 4 or
approximation.
5 months.
Right.
Growing season.
That's the type of analysis I said, a gross analysis.
What I mean, it won't be perfect because although ECP does have school during the summer, it won't be a perfect example of with kids in the building and plus the gardeners. I'm just fearful of Mission Creek. We keep adding little things on, and we need to talk about phase 2 this year and identify what that is. And every little thing we add on, although they're all great ideas, I just want to rein us back in with our limited amount of funds and just kind of put that at the top of everyone's mind again.
Can we actually
Speaking of
don't,
which.
yeah, we actually don't know if we have an issue. I mean, if it's $40, I mean, who knows what that value is? So maybe that's where we start. What is that gross guesstimate? The difference between, even if they have summer school and they have winter school, the difference would still be the garden. So is there a way to grab it?
Administration,
Just by looking at the bills
Yeah.
for probably April through September.
Yep,
Yeah.
And
so
see,
that's
you know,
it. So
May through
And comparing
September.
it
come back to us in a
the
month.
school
with-
year bill.
Yeah, as opposed to maybe October, November.
Right.
Because that, typically the kids are there, actually would probably be a little bit less because the kids are in the building in the summer.
Right, so you assume that
So it would be at
the
least that much.
delta between the summer and the winter,
Correct.
because the kids are there in
So
the
you
winter.
want to
but
say
they're not in the
November,
summer.
December with the January bills as opposed to May, June,
March.
July.
March, April, May, June.
Right.
I just
Okay.
want to make a point of clarification.
Yes.
I'm not proposing that we do all these things. I'm for one who don't believe in making decisions by default. If that's something you feel that it should not be done now, you make a decision. We looked at it. We don't think that's the right time to go into it. We'll review it a year from now. That's a decision, as opposed to saying, well, I don't know. I like to make a decision, positive or negative. If you bring up an issue, make a decision. We're going to pursue it, or we could table it for 6 months. That's what I'm saying.
So can we come back next month at our next meeting with some estimate as to whether it
The
makes
difference in
sense?
water usage.
I'll
Yep,
have
the difference in
I'll
water
have
usage
accounts
is-
payable do the analysis.
Right, and then we find out how much it costs to have that water meter installed and do a comparison.
Got it.
October. Good. Okay. Speaking of money, Lisa, Assistant Superintendent for Business, we have a couple of items for you to go over.
Sure, there's nothing new with the American Rescue Plan,
All right,
right? That's
no change.
no change at all.
Okay,
The trustee Valen, I'm going to speak on your behalf. The audit committee update, trustee Valen has put out more than once that we're looking for two community members to become part of the audit committee. So if you know of anyone that would be interested, or you think that would be a good fit to be on our audit committee, they can email trustee Valen at cvalen@greenburghcsd.org. Zach, can you put up one of those two that I just emailed to you? The one on the right. Yeah, that one. So I did a little bit of an analysis so that everybody, trustee Warner asked me to put this together so we could see where we are at with our capital funds. We started before all of these projects, and phase 1, there was $175,303 sitting in the capital fund. The capital construction phase 1, if you remember in the 2020-2021 budget vote, we got approval to kind of clean up where our money was for the capital fund. So there is $5,759,337 that was put into the capital fund for construction phase 1, and it could be used for other things. To date, we've paid some architects' fees. And we did have the bids for phase one that were awarded to HVAC, electrician, general contractors, things of those trades. And they came in at $4,487,500. The only bid that we did not get was for plumbing. And we are working with Fred and Jim on how we are going to solve that. Are we going to put it back out to bid? Are we going to look on BidNet to see if there are any plumbing contractors that have been given awards that we could go through? So that would leave, as long as everything comes in within budget and there are like no excessive change orders, we still have a little more than $1 million that would be sitting in the capital fund. Then this past budget, we asked the public to transfer $1,300,000 to the capital fund. And that was going to be used to replace the Woodlands Middle High School gymnasium, which has been completed, and that cost $431,993. The RJ Bailey Gymnasium, which was also completed this summer, cost $75,402. At RJ Bailey, we did not have to do asbestos abatement. At Woodlands Middle High School, we did, and that was more extensive than we thought it would be.
Okay.
So then what's left of that $1.3 million will be dedicated to the fire hydrants. And right now there's $792,605 allocated for that. Then if you also remember, in the 2020-2021 school year, we had excess fund balance of $1,426,274. And we're dedicating those funds to the mansion roof replacement. And that bid came in, and that came in at $1,337,500, which would leave $88,774 in the capital fund that could be reallocated to something else. The American Rescue Plan grant, if you remember, we had designated $1,625,321 that would help go towards the ventilation in all of our school districts.
Yes.
Or all our school buildings, excuse me. So once all these projects are done, if there are any monies that are left over, they will remain in the capital fund. And when you go to do another project, let's just say phase two, if there's money left over, then we would go through the same process we did with phase one. And we would, again, ask the taxpayers, this is what's left over. We'd now like to use this to help fund phase two.
So how much for the actual fire hydrant cost? You remember?
We'd have
$814,000.
So it was 814?
Yes, it's a little more than 792.
Yeah.
But that's okay because
you have more
we
than
have
$1 million
we have
left.
88. So we
could move that. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, Zach, could you put up that second sheet, please? And then this is just showing you the repair reserve. There's 1 million. We began with $1,611,827 in 2020, 2021. We've asked the taxpayers that we could put up to $3 million in the repair reserve if there was excess fund balance, and there was. But we also took $357,500 from the repair reserve and put it into capital construction phase one, because that was the portion of phase one that could be identified as repairs. So right now there's $4,254,327 sitting in the repair reserve.
Yes,
And
please.
that hasn't been allocated for anything.
No.
Yes.
So
Yes.
is that $4,254,327 available to use possibly for our chem lab or the labs that were
yes.
2.5 million in there?
If
somebody decided
it's a repair. If it's a replacement,
I
no.
know. So
It has to be a repair.
do we know what that estimate was, if that was a replacement or repair?
Sure.
Because it was 2.5 million.
That, I would say that would be a
I think
repair.
That sounds new.
Should
you do the firewall?
But that's
all original with
I
the
can
case
be
work.
that's just the gas piping.
Infrastructure, gas.
And it's 100,000.
Yes.
Not item.
Well, I think,
33.
Trustee Mears, I think that 2.5 involved doing walls and, yeah.
Okay, and that, with the gas pipe, you said, about 100,000?
That's, yeah.
And then also, what about our,
Some of that's part of the EPC. Sorry, right,
is it part of the EPC?
That's what they said, it could.
We don't know.
We don't- yeah, when do we find out?
we don't know yet.
In October, well, I've been speaking with BBS and I've been speaking with the Con Edison Solutions lady, getting numbers and everything together. They weren't going to be ready for tonight, but they will be ready to speak to this committee in October.
And what about, the curtain walls at Highview?
Well, that's not a repair, that would be a replacement.
That's completely replacement. Correct. And then what
And
about?
the 57,000 wasn't going to make it, and so we needed better materials. And I believe the last thing that happened with that particular project was, I think Jim Wadick has told me that Mike Falcone actually found another vendor with better materials, but we're now searching to see if we could, because Mike Falcone is retired. So we're now searching to see if we've got documentation on who that second vendor was, or whether we have to go out and find somebody from scratch.
Last question, what about the track and tennis courts? Are those repaired or do those count as?
Well, if we were just, that would be
Replacement, if you're upgrading them. You don't want asphalt anymore because of shin splints, right? Then you want a new kind of surface.
Yikes, okay.
And
I think I'm
Jessica,
done
you have
with
a question?
I'm actually raising my hand on behalf of Megan, who doesn't have the capacity to do it. So I'm gonna let Megan jump in.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I'm raising my hand for Megan because Megan's raised hand function doesn't work, but she would like to speak now.
Megan, speak now.
No.
Oh, no, we can't hear you.
Yeah,
We can't hear you.
your speaker's not.
Oh, there you go.
That's better.
Back in.
No.
No.
Megan, do you want to type it in the chat and then I'll read it out?
That will work.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Now you work. Now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you though.
You muted herself. Okay. Okay, so we will hear some feedback in a moment. Do we need to? Yeah, go ahead.
Jessica, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Megan, when you were unmuted, we could hear you.
Yeah, Megan, try again.
It's not. Okay.
Yep.
It's random. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I just had a question. Lisa, you were saying that when phase one, like when totals come in, we'll know what we have for the money for phase two to kind of begin work on that. But I'm concerned that what we're seeing is a delay in things getting completed. So how are we going to start our planning for phase two, knowing that we won't know what the funding is for what we have in phase one?
So once the energy performance, Con Edison Solution gives us their recommendations on what they feel needs to be done or should be included in an energy performance contract, then Mr. Pugliese, Dr. Iverson, Dr. Macaluso, and I can sit down and we know what our marching orders are from what this committee has said, and that whatever on priority ones and priority twos that haven't been addressed, we're going to put that into phase two and come up with a dollar amount. We could use whatever's left over in the capital funds that we would know of that could go towards that. And we could also use any money that we now could put into our capital reserve. So for example, once our external audit is done, which is being conducted right now, I know that we're going to have excess fund balance. I'm just waiting to see what the exact number is. It's going to be my recommendation to the Board of Education that that excess fund balance go into the capital reserve. Because if you remember, when we asked the public to do a capital reserve at the vote last November, it was for 10 years, not to exceed $15 million. So any monies that we could put into a capital reserve would be the money that could offset a bond if we had to take one.
Assuming that we would want to try to be bonding for the spring for May, right? What is the timeline on when we would have the EPC contract with totals in? And no,
Should be around October. They're finalizing the numbers now. They're very close.
okay, thank you.
And very shortly have a preliminary draft of we will show you a little preliminary draft of the things that they're looking at right now in a few minutes here. So you'll get an idea of what they're working on.
Before you move on.
Yeah.
Oh, I see a question. Before I say.
Yeah.
Good question. Just for any friends that are coming in new to the committee, right? Like, they don't have a history of, I don't remember if we had a summary of very top level, doesn't have to be detailed, of repair versus replace. Because I find like if someone's now joining for the first time, or it's a little confusing. It's hard to keep track of. So did we have that in the past? And apologies, I may have missed the meeting where it was listed.
Dennis, would you like to describe repair versus replace?
No,
She has a list.
like a list, like a top level, something easy to reference of someone who's online says, you know, is asking and just.
Well, for example, the RJ Bailey auditorium roof, that would be a repair.
Yes.
You could go to the repair reserve if you had to.
Is there a list?
So you want to do the whole BCS and put
In the BCS, they use the word replace for this, replace for that, and they use the word repair at times, so.
Right, it just, I feel it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
Trustee Rowland. Oh.
Go ahead.
So for Gabrielle and anyone else, if you go on our website, greenburghcsd.org, and you go to departments and you go to, there's probably a quick way to do this. This is the way I go through. You go to departments, you go to facilities, you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see a section called Building Condition Survey. And you'll see lines that are abbreviated BCS, Early Childhood Center, and then in parentheses, facility expense. That's actually two documents. BCS Early Childhood Center is the building condition survey that was last completed and which will be updated for December 2022. And then facility expense gives the priority levels and the estimates as they were 5 years ago when the BCS was first completed, 2 years ago. So it'll give you some indication of
Yes. Would you
what
say
we
first?
thought needed to be those documents. Those are
There
two
you go.
documents in each slide.
Go into
So-
the facility expense.
So you're saying somebody would have to go under
Go
each.
the early childhood, no, don't click on that, go back out.
So that's
Okay,
the
so there's
actual
there's
building.
Now
building
go
condition survey, and then
that right
in the
there,
parentheses,
facility
look at the
expense.
parentheses.
Yep, there you go.
And
Well,
there
that one gives
are the
you-
priorities and the descriptions of each item.
And where do we find out if it's a repair or replace? The
You read it,
actual.
and it
Well,
says-
you actually got
Go
it.
down,
It's a verb that we're looking for.
It says replace
Okay.
right there, item 112.
I'm gonna go back to the question I just heard a community member parent ask. There's not a list is the answer, right?
The list would be, it would be,
It's not like repair.
It's not
just
repair.
replace.
That's what she-
She's looking at the column that
So
says
we would have to
repair.
go- Somebody would have to go into each thing and look to see.
Have to make our lawyers do it.
At least
Do we
it's
have
something that
any page that shows the definition of replace versus repair so the public would know? Because I even get confused here
Yes.
on what should
Like
be.
we're talking about
Yeah.
it in certain things, because you just said the Bailey roof could be replaced. Now I was on remote, but I thought that someone said it could be, repair. I thought someone said it could be replaced. So certain things could be either. Is that
yeah,
what?
sure, you could, I mean, we just want to fix what's leaking over the auditorium, so it's not gonna ruin the new seats.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's a repair.
but
Right.
as Jim Waydig said, that
We might want to
we have
replace.
gone past the useful life, it really should be replaced.
Should be replaced. It's exceeded its life expectancy. That's what the problem is.
But in order to get that seating in, couldn't we do a repair just so that the
Yes,
next?
That's what we plan on
That's the
doing.
plan.
Okay.
That is
I'm
the
just putting
plan.
up the record.
Okay.
Chris?
Yes, Chris.
So we discussed, so to your point, and to the point I think we've been making off and on for a very long time. We discussed in June and then actually made a very concrete suggestion that echoes everything we've been saying, asking if at the end of August, we could have the building, the 5-year plan / spreadsheet updated, which because we were creating this spreadsheet that would list all of these things and had columns for where the funding was coming from. If you, Zach, if you could scroll up just a teeny tiny bit. Over there, you see things that say major system, major repair, et cetera. Columns similar to that, where you could filter down onto certain columns to see things plus the priority level. It was kind of a consolidation of all of these sheets per building into one spreadsheet
Yeah.
that we would
I
then
remember
also
that.
have identified
Where is it?
what project, right? But Ashley had asked in June if we could have that updated for the end of August. And I think it's a document we need to have as we're identifying phase 2. So we know what's already been taken care of, what are the remaining priority 1 items, et cetera. Before we start checking on
So
everything
that you
that
can
comes
see
to our
something
mind.
like that in about November because.
And that
they
might be a
can
document, once it's completed, that could be posted online for easy access. I mean, it's similar that it's scrolling through each page, it's just in a spreadsheet form.
So that
So
form
I'm
is
just gonna
gonna
put
be
in that reminder.
updated for the end of September, you're saying, or the end of?
I personally would wait until we have the energy performance contract, which will change what is left for us to deal with.
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
So we agreeing that post the next meeting in October, when we have that, we'll work on that spreadsheet. Could we have that in time for the November meeting?
And we did.
Sure.
Okay. On spreadsheet for November FinFech meeting. Okay. Good. Okay. So now, let's see, we should be able to blaze, you have pretty much concluded your report at this time.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we should be able to really quickly move through a lot of these items. So the 5 years facility plan, I think everything that's said there, we have already talked about with Ed McCormick and the September 20th, the subcommittee stuff, including the finance, the facilities committee stuff being made public at that point.
Right.
The building conditions survey, we've talked about that a little bit. We've said that we are going to have to update it again for March of 2023. Jim Wadig told us that's not a problem because in most cases, it's a matter of pulling things out of the existing list as opposed to adding. We're going to ask that we raise the priority of the science labs, but pretty much that's the general plan. Then RJ Bailey Auditorium, we've already talked about in depth and detail. I would note that we did have some preliminary estimates for the things that we're not going to wait for, but if we had the money, we might use, and that was the sound and lighting system. There's that 50 to 70K for sound system and 75 to 150K, depending on what you wanted for a lighting system. And we need to move forward regardless, and we can always do it later. That's the gist of the thing is, if you have to wait for it, if you don't think you have the money, go forward and do it later. Okay, that's where we're at on that. Then status of the major facilities projects, the Warburg campus water lines and fire hydrants. BBS, can you tell us, has there been any progress on getting back the topography report to go ahead with the submission for the water lines?
It's my understanding that the surveyor is scheduled to be there in early October. We had some difficulty getting 3 prices. We got 2 prices. The third surveyor was too busy and was not able to give us a price. We checked with Lisa to see if the district could award based upon 2 prices with a third contractor declining. Unfortunately, she came back and said, no, we need to get a third price. So we went out to a third surveyor and we got a price from a third surveyor. A PO was issued, but I think then we found out, or we discovered that one of the contractors came back, one of the surveyors came back and said, I can lower my price. And that price now became the low price. So then we canceled the PO and I believe are in the process of issuing a new PO to the low firm, the low surveying firm. They have already scheduled the work without the PO. They are anticipating coming in early October, which is 2 or 3 weeks from now to do the survey work.
Okay. Fair enough. That's where we're at. Then that's where we're at. Phase 1, any questions or comments on that? Okay, phase 1, the $5 million ventilation Hy-View roof project, we've alluded to different parts of it. So we submitted the NYCP back in December of 2021. We didn't get approved until July 18th, 2022. So that meant that, that all of our scheduling that was based upon having approval from NYSED before the end of the school year, everything got shifted. So, Fred, you want to say a word or two about this?
Can we scroll down the page, please, Zach?
Yes.
Number 11, go keep right there.
Number 11.
Right there.
Sure. Jim Waitig, I don't know if you want to jump in here. I think you had some timelines already set up for this and status on this.
So we have, phase 1 project, the roof replacement project and the vestibule project all kind of kicked off simultaneously. Just recently with construction meetings with the contractors that were awarded the projects. So they're getting their bonds and insurances submitted so that they could get on site and start doing some of this work. Right now, I think majority of the bonds and insurances are in for review to make sure they comply with the specifications. So the contract start date is basically the kickoff meeting, which occurred in early September. And then we've given them for each of the contracts, a 130-day timeline for completing their work. If due to issues with obtaining materials, things need to get pushed out a little bit, we can modify that with a no cost change order. But right now, we're scheduling for work to be progressing through January 2023 for completion. So right now, materials, shop drawings are starting to get submitted and approved, and then the contractors can order their materials and start getting that stuff in.
So I assume that means that if you've got the, if you've got those, all right, so a lot of it's interior work, right? So there's not an issue for most of it except for the high view roof, right?
Correct,
So,
and mansion roof.
yeah, so that has to kind of happen before the snow flies. So are we okay with it? Is it easier to get roofing materials than it is to get ventilation boxes?
The roofer for the Highview project has indicated that he got, I guess, most of the material coming in, so it doesn't look like there's going to be a problem there. I don't think there's an issue with the asphalt shingles for the mansion roof. Maybe some of the flat roof areas, there may be some issues with that material, but I haven't heard that as of yet.
It's a fairly small roof section at Highview.
Yeah.
We have had issues getting tapered insulation in the past for flat roof areas. But we can get small sections. To get a whole roof has been problematic for us. But to get smaller sections like one wing, like we have at Highview, we have been able to secure that. So we're hoping that that's not going to be an issue. HVAC equipment has been an issue for us, again, depending upon the piece of equipment, whether there are chips included in it. That has been an issue. So we're going to have to keep our eye on it and keep you posted.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, good. Energy performance contract. Okay, so Con Ed Solutions has performed field work and consulted with GCSD Legal during the summer. Carol came back and mentioned that to us. Con Edison was going to come, but they've rescheduled their proposal to come and present to us for the October 12th meeting. There are a couple of issues, and I think we might as well bring up their presentation. That's on the link. So let's go and find, there's a PDF version of a PowerPoint that has, let's see. No, that's not it. There, to the left there, right there. That one. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to run us through this?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is the scopes of
Maybe
the
that's-
energy conservation measures. Again, Con Ed, this is draft at this point. They are still working out final details, but this basically matches the scope that we had reviewed this spring before we awarded to Con Ed. So it appears as of right now that they were able to fit everything in the project that we had asked them to fit in the project. So the first one is LED lighting controls. That's very, very important. That's the low hanging fruit with a great payback and great energy savings. We talked about having them install rooftop PV at Highview on the section of the roof that we are replacing. So they have worked that in. Direct digital controls throughout. And this is actually every single piece of equipment now will come off of the pneumatics and be tied into the direct digital control system. So that's a huge win for the school district because your controls are in a state of disrepair at this point, and they are problematic to say the least. So I'm very happy that they were able to work all that in. Reinstate.
Does that mean that phase one, the phase one control stuff at Leon Jackson then comes off of the budget for phase one?
Yes. So, well, at like for instance, Bailey, we're doing the unit vents there, but we're going to do the controls as part of the unit vent job because they need to be controlled in the meantime before this energy performance contract work actually happens. So we have a combination of things that are coming out of phase one, and some things are staying in phase one just because it makes sense as far as a timing and sequencing standpoint.
Okay, so we may get a little money back. Good.
Yes. 4 is natural gas service to the buildings. They have been in contact with the gas supplier, and they have proposed routes selected on where they feel that they can get all that gas and bring them back into the buildings. So that's great for the district. A limited rebuild on some of the air handlers, which again, that scope was in the spring as well. And some of that work was in phase one, and we are going to be able to pull that out of phase one and get some savings there. We have a couple of rooftop units, 4 rooftop units at Woodlands High School, Middle School that they're going to be replacing. Limited rebuild of some air handling units at Highview and Bailey. Install new boilers at Highview, which was also in the facility. It was in the facility study, or the BCS. That was not part of phase one, however, but that's great. They're able to do that. Install new water heaters at all the schools throughout the district. So they're going to be putting in high efficiency natural gas where they can, condensing type water heaters, which will be much more efficient. Install new software controls for district computers, and that is basically so that computers don't stay on overnight if they don't need to, or over a long weekend or vacation period or something like that. And that has to be coordinated with your IT department. Timer controls for window air conditioners, and the comment they made is that as they walked around the buildings this summer, there were a number of window air conditioning units on where the building was not occupied and the rooms were not occupied. So these are basically like smart controllers for those. They do have override buttons. If you need to turn the air conditioner back on, you just press the override button on the smart controller. But again, a huge energy savings for the district. They had some insulation of piping, fittings, boiler breachings, things like that they had identified. Steam traps.
Is there an asbestos abatement issue there?
No, these are pipes that are not insulated currently.
Okay.
Steam traps at Bailey. Solar PV carport and battery energy storage system at the high school football field. And there is, I don't know if you have the whole presentation that Con Ed put together, but we can scroll down later. There is an aerial that depicts what they want to do there. So we can talk about that a little bit. That's something that the committee should take a look at and make sure everybody's comfortable with.
And is that in the 18-year plan, or is that only in the 25-year plan?
These are all in the 18-year plan.
Good.
So the 25-year plan is that legislation went through New York State Senate and it passed unanimously to extend the payback period for New York State school districts from 18 years to 25 years. And 25 years is what the federal government requires on their energy performance contracts. And the reason that that's a good thing for you is that the longer payback would allow you to do more work as part of the energy performance contract. That apparently has stalled somewhere up in the New York State government. We're not quite sure why. It's amazing when something goes through the Senate unanimously. So you got full agreement of everybody there. So I think it's got to go back through Assembly and And the governor is apparently willing to sign it and eager to sign it. So we do have a column. They've been looking at that, but as of right now, it hasn't passed. So, we can't count on that at this point. Improve building envelope and weatherization. That's basically weather stripping, sealing of the building to keep drafts out. And the last one is refrigerator compressor controllers to make those compressors run more efficiently. So that's basically the overall scope. Again, it's pretty much exactly the same as what we talked about in the spring. I'm glad Con-Ed was able to fit that in. I will tell you, though, that they are struggling a little bit right now with cash flow. And because the district has very low building aid ratio, they can fit the payback in within 18 years or less, but they also have to make sure that the cash flow over the 18-year period is going to be positive cash flow. So we're working with Lisa, and I have a call into the state education department just to triple check your building aid ratio, so that we can tell them exactly what is and isn't. One of the things that we might be coming back to the facilities committee with is a discussion of potentially.
Yeah, could you scroll one page?
Okay, so there's the 25-year payback. So, we're showing right now under the 18-year payback about a $21 million project. If the state does allow it to go up to 25 years, we would be able to go up to a $27.5 million project. So we'd be able to do even more work than what they proposed at this point. So New York State building aid ratio, right now they've shown 10% in there. We're not sure if it's 10%, 0%. Again, Lisa sent me a document. I'm just checking things with the state to get them to interpret their document and just confirm that. But one of the things that we can do is if you go to the public and you ask them to approve the energy performance contract, you can get your 10% incentive aid, an additional 10%. And that will help the cash flow. That we would have to talk about that. If they need us to do that in order to improve the cash flow, they're going to come back to us in October and talk to the committee about the possibility. So that's something we would have to think about if that's something you're willing to do. Now, one of the things is they would want to do that and not have to wait till the May budget vote so that we can get you the energy savings as soon as possible. So if you look, well, no, it's not actually on the sheet, but their energy savings is about $400,000 a year, I believe. So if you were to expedite that vote and do it, say, in late November, early December this year, if we can pull that off, you would save a half a year's worth of your energy savings, or $200,000 worth of work. And I know David and I talked about this. There is a cost for a vote. I understand that.
It's $18,000. So I checked with Ivy and the previous time in December, and it did take us from about September until December to get it done. So we could probably do it by December, not November. But the cost of the last time in 2021 was approximately $18,000 to have the vote early. So if we save several $100,000 and we spend 18, then that's probably not a bad thing. We have a couple of questions here before we go any further. Faisal, you want to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I have a quick question. With the federal government passing, I think it was the Inflation Reduction Act, they had some federal credits for solar panels, etc. Would that be factored into this project as a whole? And do we know how much we would benefit from that? Over.
It's already factored into the numbers that Con-Ed developed. And you obviously can't get federal tax credit because you're a nonprofit, but what they get converted to is basically rebates. So they have already factored in the rebates on the Highview photovoltaic and then on the carport photovoltaic down by the athletic field. So yes, that's a good point. But yes, that's already factored into their numbers.
Okay, Jessica?
Hi, I have two questions. The first one is, if we were to go to a vote and it got turned down, does that mean we can't proceed with the energy performance contract?
No. It only requires board resolution. That would be sticky, I think, from a political standpoint, if the voters turned it down. But the way I've heard it explained in other districts, and I'm going to paraphrase this and say it much more directly, but basically, we want to save 10%. We want to get 10% building aid back. We're going to do this project whether you vote yes or you vote no. So if you want us to get 10% more money back from the New York State Education Department, please vote yes.
So it's a huge education,
yes,
of like getting everyone aware campaign. Okay. My second question is, if you go up a little bit more, can you remind me about the electric carport? Because I know when we talked about the bus and we were looking at the pictures, but I just don't remember it coming fully into what we agreed on.
Well, you'll see if we, I think it's part of this presentation.
Yeah, it's
there
just
is
up
an aerial in here.
Next
down
slide.
one more slide.
There
There
you
it
go.
is. So this is the solar carport and the battery energy storage, and they've combined the systems in two. This is the area of land, I believe, that the school district had identified as a good location. They were originally talking about ground mount, but actually it's easier if they do carport because they don't have to do any tree trimming. They can get the panels up higher. You can then park under them. So I know you use this as a temporary parking area at times, even though it's not paved. So you would still have the ability to do that. They have sized the system so they didn't have to do any tree cutting. They could make the system larger if the district were okay with removing some of the trees in that area. But I know that, you know, there was some concern when we had the original proposal from them as to taking down trees in order to put solar in. So as of right now, they've sized the system for maximum without having to do anything with trees. There's new switchgear in there. There's a new battery energy storage system in there. It'll all be tied together. So this is basically the proposal that they've come back with. Again, you know, I'll let them explain that more at the October Facilities Committee meeting. But this is kind of where they went with it. So I like it. I think this is a great proposal. I think it's a great compromise. We don't have to cut down any trees. I think it's a great location. I'm glad they decided to go with carport rather than ground mount. You know, it keeps it out of harm's way. It gets it up higher. I think this is a great solution, but again, something that you guys are going to have to discuss and make sure that you're comfortable with.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
want
this
to
is
move the
exciting.
path to the north end, further from the High Point border, but Mr. Simon may have something to say about this. Mr. Simon.
Yes. Right now, you know, as I indicated before, I was part of writing the BIS law for the town. Now, there are certain things that we consider. One was the distance of the unit from a residential, from the residence, you know. We are keenly aware of that because right now we're looking at a battery storage facility in the shopping malls on Central Avenue. So what we did is measure from there to the first residential property. And the distance that we put in is less than what the state put in, you know, because the state guidelines are very broad. But what we did, we used the state guidelines and we tailored it to the town. Now, as a independent school, you don't have to go to the planning board to make that decision. But the reality is, if the distance of that unit is shorter from a building than it is on a home in the town itself, it's not a legal issue, but it becomes a political issue for the school board. And for residents to say who live in High Point, and let's face it, one, we have a big challenge with the voters at High Point because they voted against the bond issue. You see, so we have to be, you know, I was like a pariah because I was pushing it, but we have to be conscious of that, okay? the distance between that and the building. And what our current codes are. Okay. Now, I don't understand how this technology, you're saying that the BIS facilities that that work is that they basically charge the lithium batteries at night when the rates are low, and then they sell it back to Con Edison during the day when the rates are higher, and that's how they make their profit. Now, how does that situation affects the school, and how do we profit from that?
So the original battery energy storage proposal from Con Ed did exactly that. It was tied into the grid, and it can only be tied into the grid in very specific locations, as you know.
Right.
It was tied into the grid. It took power at night, less expensive power, and it sold it back to Con Ed. That was only for, I think, a 3-month period during the summer when the rates were favorable to be able to do that. The rest of the year, that battery energy storage would sit idle. In this type of a scenario, during the day, we can actually create some of that power through the solar photovoltaic system. So basically free power, clean energy, and we can feed that into the battery energy storage system as well, so that you would have to produce or use less power at night in order to charge those batteries and then sell that power during the day. So it's going to be a combination of both technologies. They just did this at Ardsley schools. There's a complete installation there. It is a combination of, again, photovoltaic as well as a battery energy storage there as well. So I think I might have sent some photos of that to David and the committee previously, so you could take a look at it. But I'd certainly encourage you to drive by there. If you look at where it is, it's really kind of at the front
I've been
end.
over it. I've seen the one in Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Mike, then, and that feeds in. I just want to say, profit-wise, that is, how does that affects our costs? That is built into the rates that we bill, that we're billed by Con Edison. So we see a direct savings from this.
So yes, you will see a dollar savings from this. This will not supply power to any of your buildings, including the high school, middle school, which campus it's on. This is going back. The power that's being supplied is being supplied back into the grid. So you're basically producing power at a lower cost and selling it back at a higher cost. So there's a payback associated with it. So
now, when these units are set up in regular commercial areas, you know, there is a quote, like a rental fee that the host facility gets when they put these units in, that they actually pay. I have a friend who's active in his church, and they put on the church property, actually pay the church a rental fee for putting the product there, and then they sell the product as they wish. But I just want to make sure that in the normal commercial environment, the property owner gets a rental fee. And I just want to make sure that during the process that we are actually realizing that savings that we would have gotten if this was a shopping center.
So we did talk about, I don't call it a rental fee, but I guess it's a rental fee where basically they would put it on your land, they would own it, they would maintain it, and they would pay you a fee every year basically to put it on your land. So that was an option that Con Ed presented, and it's still an option for the district. But the reason that we picked the second option, which is this option, is that if you don't own that piece of equipment, then there's two things. Number one, you can't get any state aid on it because you don't own the piece of equipment. And it caused the energy performance contract to get less savings generated out of it So it made the energy performance contract smaller. So there were some projects that would have had to have dropped out of the energy performance contract if we went in that direction, where basically it was Con Ed owned and they leased the space from you and gave you a yearly fee associated with that. So that is an option. That was an option presented by Con Ed. And it's just that, when we talked to the committee, the recommendation was that we look at this option instead, where the district would own it, so that you get the full benefit of that and you get the savings that would generate and allow other work to be done as part of the energy performance contract.
Okay, did we see a financial comparison between the two options?
Yes.
Okay, fine, because for the previous, say, 6 months, I wasn't very active in the committee if I had other commitments. So if that was done, then I'm fine. They
And
saw
I think,
that.
I think that's a great question. And I think you should ask that question when we meet with Con Edison in October and let them explain it to you in the process they went through. But it's a good question. It's definitely a valid question.
Okay, the other issue is in terms of location. What would be good to have a cross section and have line of sight between that unit and the closest building. There's a clear line of sight so you could see what the residents can see looking down. Like I said, it's more a political issue than a legal one, but people vote. And that's what we want to make sure that we get these bonds passed. The other option is to put it near where that that road where that old building that was torn down. And that's another site you could put it, and therefore that's isolated from everything. So whether or not you look at how viable that site is, how many trees you have to put there, but at least we should do an analysis of it.
Okay. They did look at that site because that was what the committee had recommended as well.
Yeah.
And they felt that the site was very small and there would be a fairly good amount of tree clearing as a result.
Right, and we did recognition of that. Okay, so let me ask you then, I guess two things. First, the connection to the grid, I assume that goes along the entrance driveway. That's how they're going to get out to the main power grid. Is that correct? Yes. So it pulls along there. Okay, so if you were to leave the solar panels where they are, but put the battery energy storage system at the north end of the solar panels instead of the south end, you'd be further from the high point buildings. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just move see the little the diagonal.
Yeah.
You mean these, David?
Yeah. Yes. Move the best up to the top of the screen, and then I guess you might have to run a little bit of extra line in order to get out to the grid, but you solve your political problem with High Point. I think, Mr. Simon, is that correct? Are people more worried about the best than they are about looking at a carport?
I don't know, but I'm saying what we just need to do is to clearly show that we analyze all the options and whatever it is the best option for A, B, C, and D. That's
okay. And then the second
we have to make sure we do that. And the other thing, along with that, it goes back to what I said before in terms of loading up our website and showing, how we spending infrastructure dollars, because now, you're talking about putting something up for a vote in December. I recognize the advantage of the savings and everything, but whether or not that's politically the thing to do to get it approved. What we need to do is to do a better selling job. That's one of the reasons why our bond failed last time. We didn't do a good enough sales job. And what we need to do, like I said before, is a lot of good work was done in our facilities. We need to have that of our website, and people could see what we're doing with those dollars, and actually getting the point of just putting it to the vote, selling it to the public to make sure it'll be successful. And so we have to consider that versus the very valid argument that if we wait, there's a certain amount of dollars that will be lost, versus having it fail and then people having the opinion that you're shoving it down their throat, and they'll take revenge and vote down the budget. They'll take revenge of voting down future bond issue. So you have to think about that.
Yes, Tracy.
Well, I think what you're saying is accurate, Mr. Simon, but also even having all of this discussion about the carport, simultaneously parallel, we should be having conversations with High Point. They should know we're talking about this in case they have an opinion. You made a great suggestion of moving that battery
energy storage system.
There you go. North, but even having them involved in this conversation shows that we value their experience with this whole thing that's going to be happening, so that they don't feel like it's shock. You know, all of a sudden we made all these decisions and we're doing this and trying to shove it down their throat. So yes, we need to update the website and get all of this stuff clearly aligned, and especially if we're going to be asking for money, but we also need to be having really clear communication with.
Maybe reach out to their homeowners association.
Well, Mr. Simon is a member, right?
He is.
Of
Well, some of them, the school should be going to their meeting and having a conversation.
Right, so Mr. Simon, what is the best way to publicize to High Point?
Well, one of the things it's not only to High Point, it should be for everyone. Yeah, High Point.
They're adjacent to the property. So.
Yeah, but what you should be doing is getting out to the whole public, whether or not you send out a letter encouraging people to look at our website and to and to see what we're doing for the whole town. And I then see about, setting up a meeting. One of these meetings you could have in your regular meeting. You could have in the High Point facility, invite people to come and join in this meeting. I mean, the thing is, we have to get these bonds approved. We have to get our budget approved. And so we just have to do a selling job, and that's what I was saying. Just either this committee or the superintendent say, we just like to come and show you what we're doing, and right next door, we're your next door neighbor. We want to show you what we're doing.
Simple as that. Okay. Yes, Chris.
So a couple of things. I apologize. I'm going to take us back to the beginning. There've been a lot of comments in between. But before I take us back to the beginning, the simple answer is find out who's on the board of the High Point and invite them to our October meeting. End of. Going back to the beginning, I am still confused as to why we're talking about going for a vote. If everything I see about EPC says that voter approval is not required for this contract. So I hope there are people on the call who can answer this question, because I'm confused. I just need it repeated to me again. I'm so sorry, but please explain why we.
That's the question. That's the question I asked. If we do have a vote and it's turned down, do we go ahead? Yes, you guys can pass a resolution. By having the vote, it gives us a greater building aid. So we'll get more money, and remembering that, yes, the energy performance contract is not money we have to put out. We're not putting out $20 million for this. This is savings that are coming and it's going to pay itself off. So there's, to Mr. Simon's point, this is going to pay for itself. This is not costing anything. The only cost is going to be getting that vote, that $18,000 to place that vote in November. So by doing that, we may get an extra 10% back from the state, which, as David said earlier, is worthwhile to do.
So wait, so Jessica, so you're saying you're confirming that, yes, we definitely, the only way to get the building aid is to go for a vote? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Or you're asking like I am?
That's what I asked before, and Mr. Siva said that we would get more building aid if we do it, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
When do we have to do it?
So we were talking about doing this in December, and you were saying we could save more money because we're accelerating the program, so it's another half year of savings if we do it in December instead of combining it with the May vote, correct? That was the theory we were working on?
I think the concern with the May vote is if you delay it until the May vote, you're going to lose a half a year's worth of energy savings. So you're going to lose $200,000 worth of energy savings that you could be gaining by voting earlier. So I think that's why the preferred would be to try and vote it in November, December this year in order to get those savings started sooner rather than later.
Okay.
So Fred, are you saying that in order to get the 10% additional, the vote has to be before we progress on anything?
Yeah, so an energy performance contract is considered a contingent expense. It does not require voter approval to proceed ahead. It only requires board approval. However, if all you get is board approval, then you lose your 10% incentive aid. So if you want to get that aid, you have to put it out for a vote.
Yes,
So-
but she was asking, do you have to put it out for a vote before anything can be done? We don't have to put it out for a vote, but if we were to decide to put it out for a vote, does that have to happen before any of the work in the EPC is done?
Yes, I was going to answer.
I think Dennis, I think Fred is nodding.
Are you saying yes?
Say, do you have to put it out for a vote? Is that what the question was?
No,
You have to vote before you commence with the contract.
You do not have to vote. You could do it, the board can vote to proceed ahead. But
If-
again, you just lose that 10% aid if you do it that way. And the 10% aid it becomes important.
Yes.
So
The 10% aid becomes important because Con Edison is struggling a little bit now to make the cash flow on this project positive. So there are two
Otherwise, they have to
components.
downgrade the scale. Otherwise, they have to scale back.
But you would have to scale the project back somewhat if they can't make the cash flow work. So the
Okay.
10%, the additional 10% makes a huge difference for them on the cash flow. So that's why they asked the question if the district would consider putting this out to a public vote. If the answer is no, then they're going to have to figure it out and the project could get a little bit smaller.
Okay.
But
Okay. So we need to know about, Mr. Simon, your hand is still up. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I meant to lower my hand, but actually I do want to say something. Okay. Okay. I fully understand. I fully understand why you want to vote to save money. We have to sell them. We have to be able to go to the entire community, including High Point, which we know was a big negative turnout, but we have to sell it. We have to lay out the financial arguments why it's so important to have this vote. And then if we didn't, how we would lose X amount of dollars. And one of our outreach meetings should be at High Point because there was such a large negative vote. But then we have to start doing this yesterday in terms of if we expect to put it out to vote in December. I mean, it has to be we have to, we should have done it already, but so it has to be a full press public relations effort to tell the general public and High Point in particular, listen, we're saving you money. we saving money for the school, which are going to be reflected in how we make up our budget and charge. We just have to sell it. And if we can't do an effective job of selling it, then I say that we just wait. We wait and put it out to May when we have our other vote. But just to say have this vote and don't do an effective job of pushing it and make it successful, I think we wind up with egg on our face.
Okay,
Thank you.
Chris.
First of all, just quickly, thinking of High Point, thinking of where the bus is in this picture. I'm also concerned with the bus being near the road that we use to go between buildings. So I am concerned about the location in general. So when they come in October, let's just talk about, is there another site that could also be useful? And if it's still on the High Point side of the space, stupid question. I saw the Ardsley pictures. It's kind of like standing alone in the field, but can we put like a little mini wall with a mural or like, kind of camouflage it if aesthetics are an issue for High Point? What can we learn? How far away does something have to be from the best?
Setbacks.
Yes, thank you. That's the word. Thirdly, the new fire hydrant water lines. We're all set with fire suppression in this area, or we will be soon. Is that all been, we see the electric lines there, but I'm assuming that's already been taken into account, or would that have to be incorporated into the fire hydrant work?
Yeah, that was a concern that the fire chief that we had on one of our facilities committee meetings. He was concerned with proximity to large volumes of water for firefighting purposes. And this area does have a hydrant line that goes right through it, right nearby, which is why one of the reasons that Con Ed selected this area.
Okay, good.
And lastly, sorry, Mr. Simon, how many people live at High Point, just out of curiosity?
It's 550 units, and let's say 1.5. So you talk about maybe 1,000 residents or something like that, And one of the downside of High Point, because it is a gated community, they don't take an active part in getting involved, the school board, the planning board, the town board, and then they vote without having the full explanation of the issue. And that's why, and that was one of the problems, that we didn't go out and explain enough, and you wind up with this massive amount of negative votes.
Okay, so at this point, it's 9 o'clock, so we need to move on, but go ahead, Tracy.
Regarding the battery, do we have any plan for vandalism? I was a part of the donation from the Fabulous Booster Club for the kind of box that ended up being the stadium press box that was vandalized.
Okay.
So, and there was several.
From my understanding, there are 7-foot high fences, what I've seen in the drawings.
Okay.
Is that correct, Fred?
Mr. Sebo?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
We're looking for security to prevent vandalism to the battery energy storage system or any associated area.
So it'll be in a fenced-in area, that you can't really see it in this, but there is required to be a fence around it.
Okay.
So this, as well as the switchgear that's going down in that area that'll connect into the Con Ed main, will all be, in some of a fenced-in area. And you can make that private. You could put slats in the fence. You can put plantings around that. I mean, there's things we can do to mitigate the appearance and or maybe the concern of people being able to see it or hear it or whatever.
Thank you.
Good. Ashley.
Thank you. Based on what Mr. Simon raised, and he has extremely valid points about our communication at this point, I would like to request that we consider making a recommendation to the board to start working on communication of the it's what sounds like we're going to do is a December vote here to our general community, because that's going to take a little time to plan that out as well. And I think that's probably going to fall out of the purview of the FinFac committee. So I'd like to request that we consider tonight making a recommendation to the board, if everyone's on board, pun intended, to move forward with making a recommendation and asking the board to ask administration to start putting in all the pieces to come up with the communication plan to advertise this.
So remember, for a bond referendum, any kind of a vote, you have to have a 45-day waiting period. So, or advertisement period. So if you think about it, if you have the vote, say the first week in December, and I wouldn't get too close to the holidays, I would keep it earlier December, the better. The board would have to make a decision probably by the middle of October on the dollar amount and the date of the vote. We have to make sure that we can make that timing work. I don't want to, have you guys go out and put all this out there and then find out that we don't have enough time in order to make that happen legally. So
yeah. At the same time, though, what's happened in the past, Mr. Siebel, is we've had a habit of communicating kind of at the last minute, and then folks end up being blindsided because much as we put stuff out there and we do phone blasts and we do this and we do that, most people are not paying attention. And it takes a while to get folks to understand something's happening. So maybe what we could do, to your point, is instead of saying, hey, we're going out for a December vote, is maybe that communication plan could be oriented more from a context of, hey, we're planning on doing this project. Here's a heads up. These are the conversations that are happening. We're potentially considering something for December, but here's what it is so far. And then we'll figure out the details from there. But then, to Mr. Simon's point, at least we can't hear that folks didn't have an opportunity. And I'm sure we'll capture some folks that are not paying attention, that maybe this will pique their interest and we could get some feedback as well.
Okay. And I think within the next week or two, we'll have a clearer picture from Con Ed as to whether they feel they need that additional 10% aid in order to make the cash flow on this project work. That's key. If they come back and say, we don't need it in order to make the project work, then it would be at the district's option only.
Well, I don't know how the rest of these people feel, the committee, but I think we should have conversations regardless of whether or not we're asking people for a vote. We should be inviting them at least. Hey, we're thinking of doing something on the field or in the parking lot. We know that you're adjacent to that. Please come to our meeting or watch our meeting, whatever, so that they
the recommendation is to publicize regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, that's all part of the strategic plan that Mr. McCormick has been working on with the administrators, the different groups. Communication is a big part of the finance facilities part of it. Selling the project. This is what we want to do. This is what we had. This is how we want to do it. So that's all going to tie in, and I think that's a big part of what we need to do here.
Okay, so yes.
Sorry. So I just sent to Mr. Warner an example of another district's flyers, presentations, etc., to sell the bond, that if we're short on time, we can copy paste. Secondly, I am highly concerned with the time frame here if you're talking about December. Because we don't even have the final. If we're going to go talk to the community and we only have the preliminary draft, and we're not going to hear from them until our October meeting, and yet we have to have things approved and moving by October to meet the 45 days. This timeframe seems.
Yes, I am concerned as well.
So.
Okay. I'm not at the point at which I'm saying no, but I am at the point at which I'm concerned, and I'm going to find out that a week from now whether or not we really need to do this vote. But the point on the floor from Ashley is that regardless of whether we have a vote or not, we need to tell people what we're working on. So what's out here right now is that we need to develop a plan and begin telling people what we're working on in terms of the energy performance contract.
So
I agree with doing that.
So I'm hoping that what I just shared with you, you will share with appropriate people. So they can begin drafting things, even though we haven't had the meeting with Con Ed, even though we haven't had a full-on board meeting yet to discuss this. I don't know.
It's not time to, the board hasn't said yay or nay.
And there's no reason, I mean, we don't need to wait for the strategic plan to be completed before we, I'm afraid we keep wanting to have all the ducks in a row, but we can move in parallel lines, and I'd like this to be a line that starts moving forward.
Okay.
I mean, even right now, I don't know, Mr. Simon, if you can mention to the board there that, hey, the facilities committee is talking about something. This is this will be on.
Done.
But I would like to get the name of the board members from him so we can email them.
I have a board meeting. I have
Invite them here, but if you do mention you are a resident there, if you mention it to them so that they're doing something, and then have a formal invitation. If they choose not to use, they choose not to use it, but start communicating.
Correct.
I will do that. We have a board meeting next week after. I will do it at the board meeting. Just give them a heads up. This is something we're thinking about with with the idea of saving money for the district. So we could help us, help maintain the building, because one of the arguments that were made is that rather than having this big bond issue, why don't we do repairs on the building? So this is the effort by the board to come up with a concrete long-term plan to make improvements in the building. And this and what they're looking at will go a long way. And that, that's the type of argument we use, and then this is just a heads up. We don't have all the detail, but I want you to be aware, and I'll present it like that.
Okay, Ashley, so I'm hearing that what the recommendation of this committee is that we begin to publicize our current state of our energy performance contract to the public. Is that basically what you're asking for? All right. So, okay, Chris, you want to say something more? Go ahead.
So based on the samples I emailed you, and following on that point, I would like to request of our leadership team, could the October work session please include some sort of mini presentation on an energy performance contract, what it is, what are the benefits, blah, 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 and an invitation to come to the FinFact meeting to the general public. That's my request to our leadership team.
We got a bunch of presentations, so we'll discuss it.
Okay, so all in favor of having some form of publicizing our energy performance contract negotiations as they currently stand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, so really quick, can you just to get out of this presentation, could you, Zach, could you scroll us through to the couple of additional slides? So we have gas lines. So we have routes for gas lines, and in many of our schools, we only have oil tanks for our furnaces. And so in the middle of winter, if the oil supply if fuel oil supply is interrupted, then you're in danger of not being able to heat your schools, and you have to close the schools. So it's good for that reason, and also because it saves you money, because at certain temperatures it's more efficient to heat with gas than it is with fuel oil. And these are proposed routes for the lines. Would you like to add anything? Fred?
Yeah, that's a huge. This building here that we're in right now, we only have a 3,000 gallon fuel storage tank. If it's a long winter, a long weekend, you have one day we're on fumes sometimes, and it's an emergency, and you don't want to have that when it's 5 degrees out or even 10.
Correct. Any comments or questions about this? Yes, Tracy.
What does construction look like?
Construction.
Is there construction?
Gas line. Gas line.
So what does this look like? When will this be put in?
Well, they're still working on the plan now.
Will it disrupt school, or will it not? Can it be done over like a break? As the construction?
This isn't something that will be done over a break.
It's a long process.
So how does this affect the school.
Okay.
So I see Jackson here, I see.
Someone is digging a gas line down the street from your school.
Yeah.
So 95% of the time, that's it.
Okay.
Sounds like it's gonna be easy breezy, right?
I don't know about easy breezy, but it should,
Long and
school
slow, but
disruption,
not
shouldn't-
disruptive.
yeah, it shouldn't disrupt any educational, you're gonna see trucks and excavators.
So this, decided, yeah, so this is going across Web Presser Park. I feel like that might be an issue, getting permission to do that.
Jackson is Highview.
So the town has to say.
Highview, yeah, I was told that the high pressure line was gonna be coming in from the backside of the school. I don't know.
That looks like
The blue one?
Yeah, that looks like the middle. I know there's a low pressure line and there's a high pressure line. I'm sure that this is,
This yellow line seems to be cutting across the park, and I can't believe we're gonna get permission to dig it.
Are we digging up the
park.
whole, the driveway up to Highview?
I haven't been privy to that. It's still in the planning stages.
So we'll hear, so they can have an answer for us.
I did speak with Con Ed Solutions today, and I was told that the high pressure line is in the back of the pool.
Okay,
So hopefully we have new pictures.
that's a question for the presentation in October.
So what construction looks like.
Yes.
And they've spent a lot of time looking at this and analyzing it. There are multiple gas lines at some of the buildings that they could have tapped in. So they've been talking to the gas company and then trying to figure out what would be most cost effective for them to do. For instance, on the middle school, high school, you had an existing 4-inch line there. They don't know whether they can reuse it or not. So it's going to have to be pressure tested. Right now, they're showing all new line. If they can reuse part of that, then they will reuse part of it and there'll be some cost savings associated with it. But as of right now, they spent a lot of time really trying to analyze the best way to run the lines, the most cost efficient way to run the lines. And this is what they've come up with.
And the difference in the yellow and the blue are,
I think the blue line is just the footage. The yellow line is the actual gas line that they're planning on running.
got it. And so the Lee F. Jackson one goes through a property, is that accurate?
Yeah, there's actually an easement there apparently, is what Con Ed told me. A utility easement that goes right through that property. So that's where they're planning on running the gas line.
Or we're next to, I know there's a little like walkway there, is that on the walkway that's actually going through someone's property?
I don't know if your water line or your electric line, maybe you go through there already. I'm not really sure, but he told me today because I asked the same question and he said, nope, there's an easement that goes through that property. So we are allowed to run through that location. So again, they'll have to explain that to us in October and, we'll have to be comfortable with that.
Is there a restoration process that goes afterwards? So when they dig up, putting in gas lines, they dig up, it's gonna tear up like grass or whatever there. They go back and they restore afterwards.
they
That's part of
restore.
the process.
Well, they don't necessarily have to dig up. They can missile these underneath property. So they actually don't dig up. They just actually put something underground and they shoot missiles underground in order to, it's called directional boring. There's a couple of names for it. So they can do it that way so that actually you wouldn't even know that there was a gas line underneath that easement. There would be nothing showing at the surface. You dig at one end, you dig at the other end, and then you just do directional boring in between.
So what's the range on that? I mean, could you cut all the way across the park?
Right. Thousands of feet.
Cutting across the.
Okay.
There's different lengths.
Okay.
Somebody put something in the chat. I don't know if it's a question or something.
I don't think so. I mean, it's a utility easement, so you're allowed to run through there. That's what the easement was created for. So you don't need permission from anybody. So you would dig a hole on the street side, you would dig a hole on the school district side, and you would do directional boring from one hole to the other. And then once you get onto the school property, you would be able to dig if the directional boring didn't make sense or was too cost prohibitive. So again, we'll ask Con Ed that question in October, but I know they spent a lot of time planning this out and trying to do it the most cost efficient way.
Yes.
May I ask one more question on the energy performance contract? Will there be a specification book provided with all of the specs on the various products that they're proposing, the LED lighting, the controls? Will they provide a preview of the items that they have currently specified for the project?
So this, like any capital project, would go through the state education department. So we have to put together a complete set of plans and specifications. And then they have to be submitted to state ed for review and approval. And on an EPC, not only do they review the plans and the specs, they also review all of the energy calculations to make sure they're in agreement. And they will review the contract that gets executed between the school district and the ESCO, which would be Con Ed in this case, to make sure that they're in agreement with all the terms and conditions.
Mr. Siebel, when you do the report to the board, can you have that as well? Just a very clear list
Yes.
of what is going to be covered, like a
Yes.
very,
Yes.
Yes.
okay, thank you.
All right. So any more questions on this issue? So let's move on. It's now 9:22. Let's kind of get out of here by 9:30. Okay, so basically at this point, going back to the agenda, which should be on about page 4 of the agenda. I already mentioned the 18K was the last time's cost for the vote. Then moving on to the security vestibule and mansion roof. We've already basically, I think, talked about that. What is the status of the security vestibule and mansion roof? Fred?
Okay, I thought Jim might jump in. So
I'm here. So the status is that we've had our kickoff meetings. Contractors are on board to get started their work once the bonds and insurances are approved. And they've been submitting their shop drawings, which, for the materials that need to be ordered. So we're in process of getting things started at some point in time. Once things are starting to, I guess, happen physically, like demolition, there'll be a convening of the building administration, let them know what's happening to get everybody aware to avoid the entrance and start the rerouting of students. But we haven't gotten that. We're waiting for a schedule from the contractors on when they're going to start groundbreaking.
And when do you think you'll have the schedule?
We have a meeting probably next week, so I'll find out then.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes.
It needs to be communicated to the community, parents, and the students, especially how they're getting in and out of school when you start that construction, and considering the safety element as well.
And parents. Okay. Good. Any other questions or comments on this issue? Good.
Where's the status of the mansion roof?
The status of the mansion roof is the same. What is the expected end date for the mansion roof? Are we looking at December
Yes.
or January?
No, that will be December where they get, I guess, substantially complete, but by January, they should have everything, finished metals and all that stuff completed. So they'll be watertight by December and hopefully in January, everything complete.
Okay.
Question, is that a GAF shingled roof?
No, it's certainteed.
Okay, because I know, well, I don't know if they do that for businesses, but I know for residents, they give a 30-year warranty on their roof for residential, GAF, so I don't know.
The shingle we specify is a 30-year high commercial grade asphalt shingle. It's more durable than a residential grade GAF timberline shingle, I guess, would be the common shingle.
No, well, there's another one. It's with the one that's architectural grade, and that's the one they give it. But the important thing, we're getting a 30-year warranty.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Good. Other questions? ECP main building, new fluid warmer is in place.
We did all these.
I think we did all this. Yes,
You can go
Jackson,
Through to bus
Hi,
garage,
What number?
Bailey with us, phase two.
bus garage.
We talked about the bus garage, consider repaving and vehicle charging station in the long-term plan. Has anything happened on that?
With the bus garage, we're constantly spreading billings in item 4 to keep the parking lot safe. Frank Gunn and myself have sat in on a bunch of meetings and some informative meetings regarding the all the infrastructure that's needed, from cutting trees down, getting generators in case something happens. You would have these buses that wouldn't be able to be charged and wouldn't be able to go anywhere. It's more involved with the infrastructure part, to the point where like we would need to get architects involved, and the blacktopping that would have to go there, the trees that would need to be cut back to make room for all the charging stations, all the infrastructure of upgrading our electric.
So
There's a lot more involved in the scope of the project than.
Okay, and what about funding sources? Are there places we can apply to?
There is funding that you can apply for, but you're still spending millions to receive hundreds of thousands. It's not going to pay for itself from what we've learned so far.
How did some of the districts in Westchester get started getting the buses? Have you talked to some of the state legislators? And
I've spoken to some of the people who have actually done the project. See, in our district, we have a bus company that we would have to go in partnership with Royal Coach. Some of the districts that have tried it, they purchased their own buses where you get the state aid back. It's a little more cost effective that way. The savings would be substantial that way.
So when those districts purchase their own buses, how are they charging them?
How are they charging?
They have put in systems.
Oh, yeah, they went
They're spending.
full out. They're
millions of
spending
dollars.
millions of dollars to upgrade their system.
And our state aid ratio is going to come back and bite us again.
Just
Okay,
because I think by 2035, 2027, I don't remember the year, it actually does. We're supposed to start having mandatory electric buses. And we're
okay,
great, so.
so
This isn't,
it's required, then
getting away.
we have to go after it. Okay. Frank Gunn, for Frank Gunn, the rusted bus hood issue was taken care of over the summer. They were expecting the new buses to come in. The new buses didn't come in, supply chain issues. So we had them paint the hood of every bus in the fleet. So now there are no more rusty hooded buses while we're waiting for the new ones.
Well, they're finished, they're wrapping up.
They're painted, yes.
It's 9:30.
Actually, you have your hand up?
Yes, just going back to the buses issue, just a reminder, the reason I raised it to begin with was because it was my understanding that besides the fact that we're going to need to go there eventually anyway, to Chris's point, besides that, my understanding was that the fuel that, in other words, in an electric bus, the fuel is electricity, right?
Yep.
So my understanding was any fuel consumed by an electric bus in the form of electricity would be reimbursed to school districts consuming that electricity. So with that said, while the project would take millions to get the charging stations and all that up and running, I think fuel is probably one of the biggest costs for us in terms of diesel with the bus contract we have today. So that's the reason I had asked to look into it. I don't know if that's been factored in the conversations. I did ask Ms. Raymond at a previous meeting to look into that. She may or may not have done so. But that's the reason I was asking that question to begin with, because if we're looking at this from a fuel savings perspective, that's not a one-time deal. That is the compounds, right? It happens every year. So that was another thing that we should be looking at to confirm if that is the case, if we would get reimbursed for that, that changes this conversation a little bit, I think, significantly. So just please keep that in mind If you could look into that some further, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, there was also some issues with lead time on the generators that would the infrastructure in case we had a power outage. Lead times on some of the generators that we would need to charge, have a backup to charge the buses, for all the charging stations.
Okay.
So I mean, there's a lot
Let's
more.
see what the
a lot more
payback
that's involved. We have to
It
look
sounds like an
back.
energy performance contract style payback scenario. You have to put money
There's a
out
lot
of
of
the front
there's a
end.
lot of parts of this.
Right,
problem.
you have to put money out of the front end, and at the back end, you end up saving, and the question is, what's the payback period?
Correct.
Right, and if it's short enough, then you can do it, and if
What
it's
I'd
not.
like, what I would also like to see in the long term is that we expand our vision of it. Go see other places that actually have it. And I just got back from Europe where I've been seeing electric buses all over the place. There's not people out there doing it. Maybe it's called for getting a building built where we have a system on top of the building, whatever, but we need to expand outside of Westchester County. And look what they're doing in California, look what they're doing in other places. And just not say it's gonna cost millions, we can't do it.
What I'm concerned about, Mr. Boobies, to add on to that, Mr. Morgan, is that, this district always has that money issue. And what happens is, if we do have to get there eventually, I don't know the year, I do remember hearing it, don't know the year, we have to get there eventually. I don't want us stuck at the end again, when we're rushing and we're trying to, even if we do it piece by piece, if we start the battery system this year, and then get commit to getting a bus next year, and then, just like.
Working it in
start-
phases, let's start off with maybe our vans at first and,
Because I
two
don't
buses.
Right.
We're stuck trying to
I think
rush.
that's,
We've got the electric
something we should look into.
Yes, pilot.
Pilot program.
Pilot program sounds great, okay. But you don't know this, it's after 9:30.
Yes, it is. Okay, so at this point, I was going to go over a number of basically there's some documentation that I have posted, and we can go over it at a future meeting as to what our past bond efforts have been, those that have succeeded and those that have not succeeded. Ivy Kraus came up with a list going back many years, and you can look at that. I also from the ill-fated $114 million bond. We had a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation on, what were our efforts? What was the history of that? What did we try? How did we attempt to publicize things? What were the actual results? Like 66, 2/3 of the, we lost by a 2-to-1 margin in spite of our various efforts. And then there was a survey and what people said in terms of why they voted yes or why they voted no. And we'll go over all that at a future meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
No, I have another issue.
Yes.
We talked about extermination, talked about the mice problem in this building. I was wondering if maybe you don't have it right now, what methods they're using to get rid of the mice problem. I know in my house, they put out like those things on the outside of the house,
The bait station.
bait station, there you go, that's what the guy called it.
Yes.
Those bait stations outside of the house, and that I guess stops them from coming in. I haven't seen them here, I don't know if you have them.
I've only seen one or two in isolated areas.
Really?
Typically, we use the glue traps here.
Right, so I was here today.
Inside the building. There's no bait stations inside the
Glue
building.
traps don't work in my house. I don't know how they're gonna work in the building, because I've had mice. Best thing is to get a cat. I just gotta tell you.
Oh, there's a bunch of them right there.
They're on the outside, right?
Yeah.
The mice that are in the wall and in the building, and so I'm bringing this up because of course it can be a health hazard for children. The algae, the urine from mice, you can't necessarily see and clean up because the feces. So why don't we have more bait stations or any other option other than glue traps?
I'll have to run it by the extermination company. I would say probably health reasons of, you don't want bait stations around people touching them. This students.
Poison, you
Yeah,
put poison in it.
But so how do they do that in the homes with children and animals, but we can't do that in an industrial school? Are you saying schools don't necessarily have bait stations?
Oh, no, we have base stations, but not inside of the building themselves.
No, I mean outside, they're like an exterior.
So it's a black box when you go inside, but you have to be aware that maybe some student might shake one and get some pellets out, if they're unsupervised, is what the problem would be.
Well, no, I'm more concerned about the fact that we have an infestation of mice in this building. And these traps are not one.
I know that the guys are changing traps occasionally when they get one, they put a new trap out, so I've seen the traps that work.
Huh?
No, I don't know if you investigate like
What other
things like when we had mice in our kitchen, you had to put like wire behind the stove.
Oh, we've done steel wool, we've done
Steel wool, yeah.
replacements of like door sweeps, that's a big part of it.
It's a large building, and they probably, you know, they have enough space.
If you just look at some of the storefront, the windows here, the aluminum's degraded to the point where you can see inside of the buildings. Yeah.
But like in my little house, there's multiple big stations all around, so in this huge building, we're not interested in that.
Oh, no, that's not interesting. We need to, visit that option with the,
I don't know what other options there
with the
are.
exterminator,
Okay, so consider bait stations. Okay, good.
Ask the contractor to propose a more effective method of getting rid of the mice
before they get into the building. Yes.
Yeah.
Just like
Okay.
the platinum plan.
Platinum plan.
Okay. Is there anything else about mice? Any other, yes, Steve.
Oh.
All in favor? Aye.
Hi,
You're adjourned. Thank you. 9:39.
night, everybody.
Somebody put something in the chat. EPCs, I'm late. Oh.
Okay, good. Good night, all. Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Are we not live anymore?